Liana, thanks for coming.
Hi.
This is dope.
This is so cool.
Yeah. I've been trying really hard to get professionals. Like I'm a neurologist, right?
Yeah.
Like I need to try to get that side out. And I've just had DJ after DJ after DJ, which is amazing and it's cool, but I want the other side of myself to come into focus.
A total geek. Well, I guess DJs are geeks too.
Yeah.
In their own way.
But there's so much healing that is needed out there. There's really like this big opportunity.
Endless.
And before we start, I do want to say, because I don't say this often enough, that while I am a doctor, nothing I say here is medical advice. If you have a problem, go seek professional help. Like with my friend Liana.
Exactly. But not here.
Right,
in
but
this
not
moment.
here. This is not. This is us talking about our own experiences and kind of things we've been through, how we feel about things. But it's not a replacement for any kind of actual therapeutic relationship or professional guidance that you may need. And you probably do if you're listening to this.
Yeah, we all do.
You weren't always a therapist. You had an entire life before that.
That's had many lives. Basically a cat. Many lives. I don't know. Where should I start? How far back should I go?
Well, can you do you have an idea of how we know each other? Because I was trying to figure that part out. Was it Pitt or the Shadow Lounge? Or
that's a great question. I don't know if I know. My first thought was like, I thought I knew you since high school.
Whoa.
But then, am I wrong?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I came to Pittsburgh in 2005
okay, then,
for college.
No.
I mean, I was I did Carnegie Mellon
pre-college. It must have been 2005.
Yeah.
2005?
Yep.
Oh, my gosh. And then you were here till when?
Till 2011. I did
that's
2 years
so
after college.
Weird. So we actually didn't know each other for a very long period of time because that's mostly when I was in California.
Whoa.
So I think we probably met on holidays many times. I feel like whenever I would come home, we would see each other.
Yes.
And then I actually had moved back here in 2009. So I feel like that's when we probably spend the majority of our time together.
Yeah. And I was really, really heavy in the DJing game in 2009. Like 2009 to 2011, I was working for UPMC in a research lab. But that's 40 hours a week, right? Like the whole other 120 hours. I don't remember how many there are, but
neither do I.
24 times 7. It's like approximately what? 25 times 7 is 175.
I guess.
So 135 hours I was DJing.
Yeah, and I was probably dancing. That's probably what I was doing. Yeah, that was my primary that was
therapy,
pretty much
maybe,
that's pretty much in some ways, yeah. I'm like, should we jump ahead to why I am a therapist? But yeah. I'll make sure I bring that into the loop.
So
too.
Were you at Pitt?
No, I went to school actually. So obviously I have a graduate degree in clinical psychology, which is what I do now.
Yeah.
But I did not do that first. I went to fashion school. I went to FIDM, which is the Fashion Institute in Los Angeles when I was 18.
Wow.
That's the first thing that I did. It was phenomenal education, actually. Sometimes I think about it as like that was me using my powers for evil. And now I use my powers for good. But I learned a lot about myself, about the world during that time. And I lived there until about 2000. So I guess it was 2004 to 2009 when everything sort of crashed down. I moved back here. I was lost. I didn't know what I was going to do. I went back to school. I studied, I went to Chatham. I studied cultural studies, race and gender studies, history. And I have always been an activist my entire life. I think I'm an adoptee, so I feel like that was just going to be part of who I was always anyway. And then, so that kind of fueled my choices. And so I think both my parents were social workers. They were kind of like, don't do this. You're not going to make any money. I know you like to help people. This is probably not the right direction, even though I think they secretly wanted me to do that anyway. And then, so I was like, all right, I guess I'll just do what my best friend at the time was doing. I guess I'll just go to fashion school. I don't know. I really didn't know. So that's what I did. I'm really good at design and seeing the bigger picture and talking, and it worked out. It was a great education, but it was just not what I wanted to do. So I came back here and I dove headfirst into pretty much like Black radical history, and it changed my whole trajectory for the better.
The things you learn in design school, in fashion school, you're designing with fabric and designing with color and with textures. When you're doing therapy, you're putting somebody's life together too and trying to get it in order and designing, but with thoughts and with emotions and with relationships.
I think about it more as yes, there's the side of fashion where you are making things, and the creative side of it. And then there is the side which is business. I studied primarily the business side of it, a lot of marketing. So it was a lot of psychology. So, but it's, like I said, sort of the psychology of capitalism, right? And very much the psychology of who are these people you want to sell to? What are their insecurities? And what are we going to give to them? And it was very clear. And it's very fascinating because you would literally create these Excel sheets and it might say, and I could make it up, Isaac. And I would literally say every single thing about this sort of like imaginary person that most of us are basing on a real person.
Whoa.
Down to what you listen to, what you eat, what your friends are like, what are your politics, everything. I mean, it's really...
This is like
scary,
the big data piece, like the metadata. And, yeah, I was thinking about it today because I got my Spotify Wrapped, my for podcasters today. And it wasn't just telling me like who was listening to my podcast. It was telling me what other music they liked and how old they were and where they live and
all the demographics.
how they got the link. It was like
wow.
It was like your most popular, episode was this one, and it was shared by text message 75% of the time. 20% of the time it was shared on Instagram, and 5% on Facebook. It's like, whoa!
I think that's so interesting because I feel like most people don't even know that you get that. Like if you are a person who is like posting to Spotify.
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
Yeah,
it's both fascinating and scary in its own way.
So, yes, I mean, I was thinking about like immediately the Faye Miller character on Mad Men.
Oh yeah,
like her role, one of Don's mistresses, or whatever, is to do the psychological studies and to like give the advertising agency that piece of how do you get people to buy. But just like you said, that was the dark side, right? You were like, I have these gifts, and I'm going to use them to convince people to buy shit that they don't want. Don't need, don't want. Yep.
Which you can see was very much against who I was in every single way. And I knew it. I definitely, I think, when you're 18, you're just like, whatevs. I followed my friend. I didn't want to go to a huge college. And I thought, wow, how nice it'll be to be 3,000 miles away from Pittsburgh. And I kind of just let that guide me. For better or worse, but that's what happened.
You were born here and then were adopted by a different family here in Pittsburgh?
No, I'm actually Brazilian. I was born in Brazil. I'm what they call a Peace Corps baby. So my mother was the first year of Peace Corps. And a lot of people who were in the Peace Corps adopted for obvious reasons, from where they visited. Some people visited many places. My mother was stationed in Brazil for a very long time, many, many years. I came back here, met my dad, both social workers. They worked at a school for boys called Auberly at night. And so they would go to the bar in the morning. You want to hear a funny Pittsburgh story?
Oh, yeah.
You may or may not remember this. Do you remember when Justin from the Shadow Lounge moved to that Luna bar? For like a second. So there's a bar in Oakland. So after everything closed, he moved to this place called Luna in Oakland temporarily.
Yeah.
And that's where my parents used to go and drink after work, which was the morning time.
Yeah. I think about Jack's as like the morning drinking bar.
Yeah.
Like in the South Side.
Oh, yeah.
Like
so
at least for the medical people.
Option, apparently, back in the, 70s.
Luna Bar.
Yeah,
Is it
70s.
Justin Strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shadow Lounge, Justin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, that was that whole site was actually a amusement park. Did you know that? Luna Park. It was an amusement park, and then like a tiger ate a person, and it's closed. But that whole corner, that whole area of Oakland there where the CVS is, that was all an amusement park. Huge. Basically looked like old Kennywood. It was huge.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, I know a lot of weird Pittsburgh history. But anyway, side note.
It has a lot of that kind of odd history. There's even like the Instagram account, right?
Yeah.
Odd Pittsburgh. Odd Pittsburgh or whatever.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. I love
there's just so many
the
interesting
bear
things.
cages are my favorite at the zoo.
Yeah.
The FDR bear
Yeah.
cages.
Oh my gosh,
Like
so
1935
creepy.
Works Progress Administration or whatever. They're like, we're going to build polar bear cages.
It is so strange.
And you walk by them every time. Nobody ever
Unbelievable.
thinks about them. Yeah, it's a wild place.
It
It's
is.
kind of like, it's got that. I mean, it has so many different influences, right? We're in between everything. We're not East
Everything.
Coast, not South, like not
Mhm.
not Midwest. We're not really Appalachian.
We're very uniquely ourselves,
yeah.
which is cool because we also produce so many awesome people.
That was Kahari Mosley's point. He says Pittsburgh punches above its weight.
It truly does. I agree. I love him. He's a very
Andy
wonderful
Warhol,
person.
Rachel Carson.
Mm-hmm.
The
list goes
crazy
on and
one
on.
that I was thinking about was Eckstein, because I was looking up the reggae like studio owners that Kev Reason mentioned on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And when they list their influences,
Wow.
it's the jazz greats that came from Pittsburgh.
You know, Betty Davis is from here. The list is ridiculous. I mean, we could literally you could have a whole podcast just on who amazing is from here.
Yeah.
In any category.
Yeah.
We're pretty much, well, not pretty much. The Heinz History Center also reports that we are the most innovative city in the entire country.
We invented the air brake. Westinghouse.
Yeah. Literally everything you could
Melon.
ever need.
Yeah. I mean, Andrew
Polio
Carnegie.
vaccination.
Crazy. The what was the other one that blew my mind?
The banana split.
No, that's up the street. That's I have the shirt. What's the name of that town? Latrobe.
Latrobe, yeah.
That's
so
important. That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Well, it's interesting because I am raised here pretty much my entire life in Wilkinsburg. I was raised there. But I am, very much a Brazilian person.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. The one that I was thinking of, though, I did come to me is Greg Gillis,
Oh,
who
yeah.
people don't think about.
Mm-mm.
And I have DJs right here all the time that are just starting their careers. And I'm like, what inspired you to DJ? This is QRX. He's like, I heard a mashup one time and it just blew my mind. He was like, I was playing DJ Hero and I heard my first mashup. And I'm like, you know, Greg Gillis is from here. He lives right up the street. Like he goes to the shows at the Gold Market. He's like, who's that? It's like he basically invented the mashup. Like he was the first person that was making mashups, and he's from Pittsburgh. Like he reps Pittsburgh. He'll never leave. And this is his whole thing. It's so wild how it's right under the surface. That
Right
kind
under.
of like that history, that inspiration, that kind of whatever. So what do you mean when you say that you're truly Brazilian?
I just mean I think it's kind of been a process for me to navigate who I am when adoption is a very taboo subject. Most people don't understand it. It's absolutely a business, and it's absolutely rooted in war and oppression. I mean, ideally, kids wouldn't need adopted, right? Even if something happened to your parents, you would just go to somebody else in the family, right? Like, seems kind of like a, an in worst case scenario, maybe situation. But you're talking about, billions and billions and billions of dollars in the adoption industry. In the work that I do, I'm also an artist. I'm like a multimedia artist. And a lot of the work that I do, if not all of it, is about identity, which is also why I study psychology. But It is, yeah, it's a very violent industry. And I have this advertisement, and I had in one of my art shows actually, where they talked about how expensive babies were based on their race. And it would say, it was a letter that my parents had this like huge folder of like everything adopted, basically. So I didn't look at it till well after my mother had passed away in like 2018. And when I opened it, it was like this history of my life, this like story of my life before I knew, and also ads, letters, doctor's visits, like just like everything you can imagine, right? And there's literal paperwork in there that's like, if you want a white baby, it's going to take the longest. And it's the most expensive option. If you want a mixed baby, I think they said biracial baby,
right,
it's less expensive. And if you want a black baby, it is faster and the cheapest option. And it's very clear. I think I already knew all of this information.
Yeah.
But I think just like seeing all of this stuff like right there, and everything has my name on it, and it's like, or my parents' name, and it's a lot to sit with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I always go to the comedy, but I'm thinking about
Makes
Sacha
the
Baron
world
Cohen.
easier.
Yeah, Sacha Baron Cohen's Bruno, with the adopted black baby that he takes on the game show.
Yeah. Well, now it's like the game shows like Instagram, right? It's like all of these white parents who take their kids on Instagram, and they're like, here's this baby. And they're very much, there's a whole world of adoptees fighting this kind of stuff on Instagram currently.
So, oh, wow. Like basically saying I should never have been uprooted from my environment.
Yeah, I should never have been uprooted from my environment. And I mean, I think the argument is, and also there's a lot of adoptees who feel differently, not vastly differently, but differently in the sense of, the question is always like, do you just not believe in adoption? And I think that's just like a loaded question that's meant to be a trap. It's not about whether you believe in something or not. Like, I believe in lots of things that are not the truth, right? Or that are not the reality of the world. But I think that, so there's this like, this ideal utopia, which we all have to keep space in our minds for, so we can create what we desire. But then there's like the very reality of like, these are the systems now, and like these kids are in the system now, and like they're going to go to places. So if that's the case, how can we really focus also on where they're going, and what are the requirements, if you will, of the people that they're going to? Also, I think it's really important to remember that, when you're talking about like intense, war and the violence in the world, that's what's happening to these kids, right? There's a level of assimilation. So in America, you probably remember, this was just like a few years ago, maybe not even. It came out in Canada, and then it was also like connected to the Americas. But you know how Indigenous kids, they found many of those graves, right? So like,
this is the something schools. What are they called?
Oh my gosh.
Work schools, or
they're
education schools, or
they're basically assimilation schools.
Yeah.
So they're basically like, we're going to rip you from your family, and then we basically make you white, right? You are going to have a new name.
Yep.
You're going to live your life in a completely different way, and it's actually like a form. It fits technically under a form of genocide, right? That's what it
get
is.
rid of the like native culture. I mean, it's cultural. What's the word?
Well,
it's erasure, cultural erasure.
Exactly,
basically.
Erasure. Yeah, exactly. It's
you're
erasure.
not actually killing people, but you're erasing.
Well, they did. They did kill them.
Well, they found those mass graves. They found the graves,
and then of course they were there because their parents were murdered and imprisoned, and among other things, right? So I think it's important to think about like, where are these kids coming from, and how do we even get to this point? And I think that's why people are afraid of adoptees and have worked so hard historically to keep us quiet, because we're ready to talk about anything. We're ready to go there. We know what happens. We symbolize, like, our very beings symbolize everything that is wrong in the world. Whoa. And I think it's a lot to carry, but it's also extremely powerful and important. But yeah, that's sort of like mass. So if you can think about like a school doing something like that and that sort of assimilation, the same thing often happens when kids are adopted from all over the world, right, into somebody's home. And oftentimes these kids of color, right, whether they're Chinese, whether they're black, whether they're Brazilian, wherever, right, wherever they're from, get adopted into white supremacist families, into cultures. They can be adopted into enslavement.
That was the part I was trying to. That was the part I was thinking. I'm like, last time I had a comment, it was comedy. This time it's the opposite, which is like, what about just straight up trafficking?
Oh,
right?
it's 100%.
This is happening for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no way to filter that out completely.
Nope. In fact, I would say that it's the majority of the situation is some level of trafficking. Absolutely, because I think we have this idea of the idea painted in our head of like these wonderful people who are doing this wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And actually it's quite violent. And I think that's what kind of led me in a lot of ways to psychology, because when I was growing up, I'm considered one of the sort of like lucky ones, if you will. Like my parents were, obviously not trafficking me or harming me in that way. They were both activists. They were both very involved in, they were on the right side of pretty much everything. So I had a lot of freedom. I had a lot of books. I was very encouraged to learn about the world. Both my parents are brilliant people. You could talk to them about anything in the world at any time, and they would be able to carry a very intelligent conversation about history, politics, past, present, and probably future, about anywhere in the world. So I was very, I'm grateful that was my experience. However, I was, still completely ripped away from any piece of my identity and who I am, and a lot of other, like I will never know who my birth parents are. I visited Brazil in 2018, and it was excruciating. I didn't know what to do with that experience, even though I went to like the very place that I was like born and that all of my like genetic material is from. And it was a wonderful experience, but it was also very heartbreaking experience, to realize how much you lose, So I think those are the conversations that a lot of adoptees are trying to have. Like, if you're going to do this, then what gives you the right? Do you speak this language? Do you have the money and are willing to make sure that the kids are connected to who they are so they don't lose pieces of themselves? Whatever it is, there's lots of different pieces to the puzzle, but it's intense. It's intense. And I think I've realized my entire life because of that being who I am, that every part of life is quite intense. And it's probably why I was dancing a lot, trying to alleviate some of the intensity that follows me around everywhere I go. For sure. But yeah, it's very complicated. And it's of course it's tied to politics in any particular part of the world at any given time, which is how we get a lot of these influx of children into any, whether it's Europe or America or wherever.
Yeah, there's this, I mean, I'm not an expert by any means on what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, but I think there's also something there with like Russia had taken some tens of thousands of Ukrainian kids. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's a mess. I guess like if you're going to adopt a kid from somewhere, you have to think about what's being lost and not just what you have to offer the kid, but like what you have to learn about them, mm-hmm. their racial background and cultural everything.
Yeah. And I think there's also a conversation of like, if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, which to do something like that, like a lot of these children, they do know where their parents are.
Whoa.
They know where they live. A lot of these war-torn countries in different spaces are told, bring your kid here because we know now you have nothing. So we'll take them. And a lot of parents are like, well, I don't know what to do. Like I don't know what's going to happen here, and they feel like it might be the best choice. So a lot of these people are pushed into these positions, and that's the other thing. So it's like, it's like if you have the money too, it's like, why do you need to take someone's child instead of just like also give
the
somebody money
to,
to like better their own life. So there's a lot of layers to it that are really about our social capital and how a lot of it is just like we just want to be seen a certain way. And we will do just about anything and create so much cognitive dissonance just to be seen as a good person when in fact behind the scenes, not only are we, often very selfish, but ignorant. We don't have the information. We don't do the work. We don't read the books. And there's a lot of this expectation of just like, I just deserve, I just get whatever because I just should have this. And I think that kind of fuels a lot of the evil things that happen all over the world. So it's a cyclical thing, right, that we experience. And that kind of led me to this place of like, I need to understand this. Like, I need to understand what makes people like this in a large scale in terms of like extremely violent people. But for me, I also really deeply wanted to understand, like, how does this look in our day-to-day life, like with my aunts who say like, super racist stuff, but then we'll be like, but I voted for Obama. So like, it's cool. Right. And I'm like, you never treated me the same as you treated my white cousins. And I know that, but you will never admit it. You will never see it. But then I'm like sort of the bad guy for never engaging with them later in life. Right. And so it's this game that we play. And so I was always like very fascinated at alleviating other people's pain. So I thought about it like that. So like, okay, here I've had this experience. How do I learn and understand and find the tools to help other people in similar positions, whether they're like biracial, whether they're multiracial, whether they're in an interracial relationship, family, etc., adoption, right? Any sort of situation like that. Like, what do you need to know to find joy and figure out who you are disconnected from those expectations? So I think that's been my life's work, and it's taken many forms. But in my mind, even though I do many different things, it's all the same thing to me, whether it's like psychology work, history work, being on a podcast, doing whatever, right? Like, starting a business, being an activist, right? To me, it's all the exact same work. There's no separation in my mind.
Healing the community, healing the world. Tikkun olam, we would say.
Yeah. I don't know. I wonder a lot in my life now, like, is it even a thing? Like healing, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, are we just kind of moving? Is it a thing that we can get to? I think a lot of people believe that it is. I don't know if I'm totally convinced. But I do think that there are things that we can do in regardless of what the truth is. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of it is that we don't know, right? We don't know a lot and we want to know so badly.
I think people are capable of change. I think that really it's possible. I know it's possible because I was terrible. I mean, I was like not a good person, as a teenager. And I don't think I'm like that anymore. I don't want to be like that. So
what do you think was like the moment for you where you were like, now I'm asking the questions, right? But
going to Catholic school.
My therapy hat went on. I'm like, what do you think was the moment for you where it
switched
pivoted?
When I went to Catholic school. I was surrounded by other high achieving kids, other kids that were there's 100% of them were going to 4-year colleges. And, I wasn't in my like hippie art school, drugs and whatever thing, high school situation I was in. So it was, it's complete night and day, but that wasn't like everything was fixed. It was just like a pivot towards wanting to achieve. And once I got that piece, then, I made some mistakes in college and had a lot of kind of, I think, relationships that I am not proud of, kind of deal.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how I fix that. I started thinking about how much it hurt me every time I like shared a piece of my own self in like sexual relationships.
Oh, wow.
And how like,
so like a vulnerability thing.
Yeah. It switched, like where I was like it's not like Shomer Nagia type where you're like completely like, don't touch me, everything, like any kind of energy exchange is like this huge loss. It's in a way, right? Like every kind of contact you have is an energy exchange.
Yeah, totally.
But some are bigger than others.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I just started thinking about it. I think like that. I was like, and you know, yeah, I think that was the main thing.
Do you think it can be chopped up to like who you are, like who you actually were, or do you think it's something that looks more like I just matured?
Yeah. No, I think I've always been a good person. Like deep down inside, I always wanted to be like that, you know, Saint Michael archetype that my mom wanted for me. And like wanted to be an upright, you know, be like a responsible person, somebody who took charge of situations and like, you know, did the right thing and helped other people, didn't just think about myself. But I just wasn't acting like it for a long time. I always had this idea, like once your branches are big enough, like once your roots are deep enough, then you can withstand the storm. And like, so you just need to like get to where you're going and then you'll be able to help other people.
Right.
I think that thing is not really the way to think about it. Life is truly a journey. You know, I was trying to tell my kid that today. We were driving to swim class and he's like screaming, like, when do we get there? When do we get there? I'm like, we're there, baby. Like, this is it. This is life, man. 100%. Life is what occurs between your origin and your destination.
Absolutely. I love that perspective, and I think that's totally true. Yeah, it's just, here we are. Here we are. And we have an opportunity to do with that what we will. We have an opportunity to use all of these sort of cognitive bias that we come up with and try to, you know, create these extraordinary, you know, somersaults in our head to just try to like, you know, validate our own experience, I guess. But, you know, or we could just read and grow and learn and be in it and do the hard things and have the hard conversations. And it's really just a choice. It's just a choice that we make every day. And I have a lot of young people, particularly a lot of young men, I think, who can relate to that feeling that you just sort of described as you were sort of growing up. And, you know, I do, you know, and I think they can carry a lot of sort of like internalized guilt and shame as you get older. And a lot of the conversation is like that, like you don't have to take these things with you. You don't have to take anything with you at all. Like nothing if you don't want to. You can move forward in any direction that you choose, and you might not know something and it's okay. Then pick up a book and you'll know something. Like you can change who you are and your perspective at any given time. I think what feels so harmful about the world, and has certainly felt harmful to me as an adoptee and just an activist, I guess, in general, has been just the observing of people who don't do that work, who don't who have that block. And I think that is what led me to psychology, was like, I need to understand that block. What is stopping you from seeing me as a human? What is stopping you from allowing yourself to grow, instead of like, just be like, this is who I am and this is just the way it is. And this is, you know, because so much of the pain that people come into my office with is because they were raised in an environment that was stagnant, that was very stagnant. It was just like, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we believe, and that's the end of it. There's no room. If you invite any sort of other idea, how dare you? You're ruining the family. You're a rabble-rouser. You're this, you're that, right? It's like there's just so much fear to be who you are and to be honest with yourself. And so I really wanted to create an environment and a space and a place that people know people are trained to do this kind of work. And being a therapist is not enough training to do the kind of work that I do at all. The work that I do is extremely multidisciplinary, and I think that's what makes a good professional, right? Whatever kind of professional it is, you know, but particularly in our fields, like in healing fields, are people that have a broader goal, a broader interest, that want to do the work, that want to learn, that are like, who are you? Oh my gosh, I don't actually know anything about that. Let me not just you tell me everything and I'm done, but let me go learn about that. Let me go get that information. And I think that is what changes us. That's the whole corny, like, knowledge is power, but it is. Like, it actually is. And it makes you feel, when people leave my space, I want them. These are marginalized groups of people. These are people who, even if they're not marginalized, like even if it's like, here's a white man sitting in my office, I want him to leave still feeling empowered to actually do something good for someone else, you know? And we do that through the way that we see ourselves, right? It starts with the way we see ourselves first.
Yeah. And, there's probably, some white men that are more marginalized than others, Harvey Milks, or maybe
there's absolutely layers and intersections.
Yeah. Anyway, what does your practice look like? So how do you see therapy, and what have you built here?
So I study liberation psychology. That's what it's called, liberation psychology. It's actually rooted in, I was very driven towards it. And then after I started learning about it, I realized that it's actually rooted in Brazilian teachings. A lot of it is rooted in, it's kind of like perfect for someone like me or anyone who is social justice sort of focused, because liberation psychology is psychology for the people, I guess, if you will, right? It's like, you don't just sort of take these broader concepts and try to apply them to everyone blankly, but you have this very deep understanding of the world and its systems and how those systems impact people, both locally and abroad, and what that looks like in terms of people's suffering. So we don't pathologize in the same way. We don't think about people as ill. We think of the society as being ill and therefore producing unwell people. This sort of concept that like everyone, like, you call into work and you're like, oh, I'm sick. And you're like, you're not sick. You just want to play with your kids. And it's like, we're not actually faking sick. We're all faking well. And I think that is sort of like the root of a lot of the work that I do is very much rooted in the liberation of all people. And so what does this work look like if that is the goal? It's rooted in Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, among many other important writers that talk a lot about capitalism and colonialism and decolonial theory, and how to apply all of that sort of liberation work to psychology.
I love it. I love the idea of the environment being the culprit, and the individual being capable of freedom or freedom from disease, or maybe like
I'm sure
being
it looks
inherently
different for
good.
you too.
Being inherently good.
Being inherently good. Absolutely.
Being inherently healthy. Being inherently like well.
Yes, I love that. Yeah,
and
exactly.
that there's these forces that are conspiring to make us sick. And I would say, there's many, but I think the ones that I think about the most are things like the American medical system, basically, and big pharma, big food.
Absolutely.
And then even the work environment in America. Oh, yeah. The ones that have killed me lately are this kind of like, and man, I've said a lot of nice things about this company on the podcast, so I'm not actually going to name them, but they recently did this
you are kind.
post on Instagram where it was like, here's a day in the life of one of our employees. He wakes up in the morning and he smiles because he's about to have the best day ever. And he walks into the office, and most of the day he's just hanging out with his buddies, playing foosball on the foosball table. Then he gets to go home at 4 o'clock. And it's like, the whole thing is about just how amazing it is to work for this company. And I'm like, you guys are keeping all the profit. What the fuck are you talking about?
Literally.
This is like, okay, he makes $200,000, but like that just means that you could have paid him $500,000 and you wanted the other 300. Like,
yes,
it's not that dope to
yes.
like what are you doing? And then the other one that kills me is we love to eat at the Texas Roadhouse.
We all have our places like that, though. We all have our places. No shame. We all have our spots.
They let my kids scream and like whatever. They have like a good kids menu, whatever. I'm a parent, man. I gotta like survive.
Well, I'm gonna have to try. Now.
I have to survive. Like anyway. They make their employees, or at least one of the main choices for the employees is this shirt. And the back of it is in big block letters, I love my job. It's like,
interesting. Wow. That's intense, kind of.
It's really intense. And to me, it's like, you might. Like, there are many people there who might love their jobs. But what percentage of them do you think that wear that ridiculous shirt actually believe it? It's just so crooked to me. It's this.
Well, and it's rooted also in this, like, you don't even know, like, people don't even know their options. Like, when people, like, they don't know, like, they have no idea what the options are.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, okay, maybe you love this, but I'll bet if you knew what was going on down there, you might be like, I'm pretty sure that I should get more money. I mean, I think it's really interesting, like the history of the service industry and this concept of tipping is completely rooted in racism.
Whoa.
It's actually during the Jim Crow era, after they so-called, like, you know, freed enslaved people, which never really happened. They just sent them to prison and found other ways to create the same environment. But during that, what happened was that they, the railroad operators didn't want to pay Black people, even though now they were supposed to. So they created this system where it was where they knew these Black people weren't going to be able to find jobs. So they were like, well, you can come work here on the railroad, but we're not going to pay you, but you can tip them. So the drivers could tip them if they wanted to.
Wow.
So maybe you would end the day with some money, or maybe not. And that's sort of, this concept of tipping is very much rooted in this this idea. And then, of course, who's making the money? Who's literally has employees they don't have to pay for?
It's crazy. $3 an hour. I mean, what? There's probably a lot in
like
Pittsburgh. You can probably still pay somebody $4 an hour. It's
barely.
Literally psychotic. And they don't do it in Europe. You know, they don't do that. What are you talking about? You bring your European friends here and explain to them how tipping works in the U.S. and just watch their eyes just bulge out of their head. The Germans are just like, what in the world are you talking about? Like, pay them.
Yeah, except then you should still tip, because a lot of them will come here and go to restaurants and then not tip because we don't do that, and that's silly, without realizing, well, that's still how these people are making money, and that's still the very much reality. You know, I think about that a lot, like what people are making in these like trendy, you know, in these trendy communities and these restaurants, and somebody who's working just as hard at, I don't know, Eaton Park.
There was another venue that I plug here all the time that I always say amazing things about, that I will also not name, that was advertising a position recently on Instagram as well for like $10, $15 an hour. Like, very like happy to advertise, just like so happy.
Yes, I know. They're so proud. People are so proud of themselves. And I'm like, what are you actually proud of? You know, it's like, well, and then it's like, well, you know, small businesses. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes we just shouldn't be in business. Sometimes we don't get the right to just do stuff and exploit other people so we can make our dreams come true. But I think that right there is like a part of that. Again, we're going back into that, like, what is the psychology that you have? Right? Not just like using words like privilege and this and that, but like, what does that mean? Why do you actually think that you get to just do stuff? You know, maybe you don't get to do stuff yet until you can figure out how to get people paid, right? Or maybe you need to do some of that work on the back end and figure out how to advocate simultaneously, or work together with people, or offer other, you know, whatever connection, you know, like whether it's like a lot of businesses are doing those like they're like business owned businesses, which I really appreciate, you know, where like it could be like a
co-op maybe?
Yeah, sort of like a co-op. And then, but even like going even further, where it's like here we sell, it's like where they say like worker owned, you know, it's like, it's not just a co-op, it's like straight up workers own
a collective
parts of this business. There's not like
no hierarchy.
Yeah. And it's just like, and I think that that's the thing, right? It's like people have to sit with like, why am I really doing this? Why am I really doing this thing? And if it's benefiting me more than it's benefiting the people who are doing all of the work, or significantly more work, or even equal amounts of work, then I need to sit and think about how I value work, and why do I really believe that that like $10 an hour under any circumstance in this country is okay? Because it's like literally never okay. Ever. It's completely unethical. And we could have arguments with lots of small business owners. And I say this as a small business owner. I've been a small business owner for 15 years or something like that. 10, 14 years or something like that. So
Wow.
like, I'm like, look, come at me. I'm doing the same work. Like
walking the walk. Yeah.
But I'm not going to do it if I can't do it. I'm going to figure out, like, what do I need? How much money do I need in the bank? What kind of other loan do I need to take out? What do I need to do so that I can make sure that the people who are working with me are paid fairly?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So what is the business? And can we talk a little bit about some of the tools that you use? We should also provide a disclaimer about hallucinogens, probably.
Oh.
I didn't really talk about that at all. But like, this is really strong medicine. And so you need to like be careful with these compounds. They're powerful, and you should have a guide if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't sell them.
I don't recommend anything to anyone. Like, I don't think this is the right path for you by any means. It has to be like something yeah. Anyway.
Everybody is like listening right now and they're like, what are they about to talk about?
Oh, somebody tested psilocybin against Lexapro in a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, which is nice. And it was 70% response in the psilocybin group and less than 50% for the SSRIs. So
psilocybin is basically
for
serotonin.
Lexapro. Yeah, it's a 5-HT2A.
Well, yes, thank you for that, because I'm not going to take it
like
that far.
all the I think classic, or I forget what they're called. Classic hallucinogens, I think, are 5-HT2A. So LSD,
yeah, 2A. Yep, that's what they are.
Psilocybin, and DMT are like those, like the three.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that the people classify as psychedelics that are not necessarily like traditionally the way that we think of them. But so I mostly work in the psilocybin community, but that's a small part of what I do. So let me create the let me tell the story, I suppose. I am known as the trippy therapist. That's sort of like the joke. A little bit about me that I think is important is that I am, if you are listening to this and you can't see me, I am a Black person. Earlier, I talked about how I grew up in Wilkinsburg, which is historically considered, like in the early 1900s, it was actually like one of the wealthiest communities in the entire country. The Smithsonian Museum called it the trendiest place to live in the entire United States in like 1900. As you know, there was a lot of money in Pittsburgh for various reasons. And this community, home to lots of different communities, lots of different people, a very diverse place to live when my parents had moved there in the 70s after they got married, after knowing each other for like 5 minutes. But then slowly changed, right? We started to see gentrification. This was in the era of Reagan. We started to see the war on drugs. All of this kind of happened. The community, all of the homes, people, just everything was just, I didn't understand it at the time. I was very young. So I just saw this community falling apart, basically. People moving out, homes becoming abandoned. People are just gone. People, the RICO Act happened, right? Which was how they were using it to like literally take anyone they wanted, basically. And they did, and they put them in prison, and some of those people are still there. Interesting side note that again is, if you're from Pittsburgh, we have this joke where everything in Pittsburgh is like what is it, like less than 1 degree? It's like 0.00000 degree of separation from everything, right? Which is how we somehow know each other so well and then don't. But it's just because everybody is so close.
Yeah.
But so the RICO Act happened. Everybody's getting arrested. My community was like all of a sudden, like there was just like no Black men anywhere. They were just like all locked up. It was a terrifying experience for me. My father at the time, he worked at Westinghouse High School, which is actually the neighborhood over in Homewood. And I was just kind of, both my parents are white, but I very much experienced them coming home very distressed, just very like engaged in just what was happening in the, 80s and 90s. So I was always very afraid of drugs. My husband still laughs at me because I use that word. He's like, stop calling it drugs. And I'm like, drugs. But like, growing up, I had this deep fear. So like all my friends were partying, all my white friends were partying, doing like popping pills. It was like rave scene, right? Everybody was on E. it was like that. There was like those people. And then on the other side of it were like people just like hanging out, smoking weed or something. But I was like, I don't do any of that. I am not that kind of person. And it wasn't even like I was like attempting to be like judgmental. I was just terrified. I was like, I'm going to die or go to jail. I can't let that happen. So I'm just going to convince myself that I am just not a certain kind of person, because that was the only way I could navigate it. And then I also had so many people dying around me, right? So when I was a teenager, I worked with someone named Darby Kagan Shields and Michael Tanzer. And Michael Tanzer was my Jewish friend from Squirrel Hill. And Darby, Michael was like a total punk at the time. He's very different now. He's like I don't know, he's making tons of money. He lives in California and he's in the weed business, and he's still a wonderful human being. Darby, I don't know, he kind of disappeared. He lives in New York, but he was this very cool artist who was also living in Squirrel Hill. So these were two of my closest friends, my best friend. They were my best friends. And we started something called Red Tape Design. Red Tape was, initially it was just called Red Tape. And it was, we threw parties. We threw parties that were all about education. So we would throw these huge, amazing parties with like tons of famous DJs, tons of famous, musicians, and it was free. It was always free, with the exception that we had tables, and you had to like engage in the table. So it might be like Food Not Bombs, or right, like all of these different community organizations that were doing really important work in terms of like changing the world. And so people would engage in them, and then they would come to our parties, and we would have tons of fun, and we would have hip hop parties, and but we were basically like, this is one of the reasons why I know so many people much older than me in the music scene that we know similarly, is because my father was a record collector. A lot of the DJs would come to my house to like buy things, or, and like Selecta, it was like, I would drive him around when I was underage it was my job. I would like go drive him around, and then I could go to any party I wanted underage and have fun. So that's what I was like.
You were Selecta's chauffeur.
Yes, literally.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is dope.
Mm-hmm.
See, now we're getting somewhere.
It's interesting because there's always a connection, right, to like community and music, right? There always is. There's no matter what we try to do, there's always a connection. So we did that for many years. It was amazing. We registered tens of thousands of young people to vote. We did incredible work. And then eventually we all were like, I guess we're going to college. I actually don't, Mike Tanzer didn't go to college, but eventually he moved away, and everybody moved away. We all moved away. So it kind of fell down. But before that happened, you may or may not remember Red Tape, as we know it, Red Tape Productions turned into Red Tape Design, which was actually the original people who started working with Mac Miller and Wiz Khalifa. We were the original designers of their artwork and all of their mixtape albums.
For Rostrum.
Yeah.
Chad Glick?
Well, none of them actually had anything to do with it. That was like whatever their recording
Artie Burns,
stuff
Chad
was.
Glick, yeah, Edan.
Yeah. But we were doing all of their art.
Wow.
All of their art.
Huh.
So just side note. So that's us. So when you look at
Prince
all
of the City, like the earliest mixtape.
Yeah, they're all us.
Amazing.
So it kind of like moved into that. And then I kind of kept moving.
Kids mixtape?
Kids, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So I kind of like moved into that direction. I kept moving in that direction, and they kind of like, Darby kind of fell off, and then Mike, he still does a lot of work in terms of whether it's psychedelics, medicine, just cannabis, everything. He's still very much involved in making healing accessible in those ways. But yeah, so we went in different directions, but that was like very much a huge influence. And so started off like doing that. And then, but the point of that whole story is that I was like this good, clean kid. I have this memory of like passing out flyers at Club Laga. Do you remember that place?
Yeah, I know Laga. I don't know that I've ever partied there, but like I used to go after it got converted to high rent apartments for my friends in the Jewish sorority.
I have not actually like ever been
when
there
I was in college.
Since.
Yeah.
I can't even like imagine. Like that would have been so crazy. I had the most wild experience of my life in those places.
Oh,
like
wow.
I saw everybody right there on stage and right this close to me. Like literally every hip hop act you can imagine, like this close to me. Erykah Badu, like right here in my face. Like it was phenomenal, and I was underage for all of it. But I remember like going to like these raves because that was like the thing that everybody was doing. And I was like, oh gosh, yeah. You know, like I remember that. I was in high school and I was just like, oh, these people. And I realized like psychologically, I was just detaching myself because there was so much death. I lost a lot of people in high school. A lot. Not only did we lose a lot of people in high school, but we had a lot of kids addicted to lots of stuff. I remember Darby's house was broken into. Somebody that we knew came in his house, stole all his computers, like just like, you know, it was just like a very tough time. And I was terrified for my own safety and the safety of others. So I was just like, I don't know. So it's kind of funny that I'm on this podcast with you because I imagine that the people who you know are also people who are like, Liana? Trippy? Liana is not trippy. Like she's cool, but she's not trippy. Like that is not who she is. And so that's kind of like the point of the backstory was like, she is not that person. She's the one I remember being like, who are you? And so the question becomes, how did I get so trippy?
Yes.
And it's because I tripped.
It sounds like Quest. What's his name? John Quest.
Oh, yeah. We're really good friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I went and took his yoga class the other day.
Nice.
But I want to hear yours. I haven't gotten.
Well, we actually have similar stories. What kind of motivated both of us was the death of our mothers.
Whoa.
And actually, when you do a lot of interviews with people who explore psilocybin, particularly, there's a lot of connections to like losing a parent and how that sort of like creates this space where you're like, I'm never going to come back from this. I need help. And that is kind of a way in. So that's what happened to me. I lost my mom. My birthday happens to fall like either on or right around Mother's Day, which is always just torture. And my husband he'll never admit this, but he is who I also met at the Shadow Lounge. We can talk about that later, but
cool.
He's a healer and he's a shaman. I will call him that. He will never call himself these things, but he just is so good with people and like creating like safe spaces. But anyway, after we were probably together like 8 or 9 years or something, and I was maybe less, 7 or 8, and I was like, all that time, and I was still like, I'm not doing this, and he's like, just do it. And so I did. So I used to be a chain smoker. The first time I ever did this, I never smoked again. I still have never smoked again in my life. Wow. And I mean, I was a chain smoker. Both my parents were chain smokers. Yeah. My dad still is. My mom died of cancer. I remember the first time I picked up my mom's cigarette and like ran outside in what I was wearing because it's like burned into my head because I looked like a child. Yeah. I had like a black oversized t-shirt with a sunflower on it and like a sunflower dress, like skirt. And I remember that because I'm like, oh my God, I was a baby. Yeah. But anyway, I never smoked again after that experience. And it wasn't an intention, nothing. It just never happened. And I still haven't done it since, nor do I even think about it. It's not something I struggle with. And I was like, I told my husband, what just happened? What just happened? How am I just felt like a completely different person. I said, I am going to give every Black person. So that is my goal, right? All of us that are afraid, like, we don't do that, we might go to jail, or like, whatever, like, that's just for white people, or like all these ideas that people have about these things, like socially, because of the way the war on drugs, like, affected us. Like, no, we have to do this. And I was like, we're going to do it. So at that moment, when we were walking around Seven Springs, right in the very, very beginning of COVID and everyone was dead, I said, we had this kind of conversation about how we want to create a space that's safe for people to do this kind of healing work. And here we are, many, many years later, and I run what's called the Trippy Therapist. So I'm actually a regular therapist who does regular therapist things. And if you're a therapist who's into any of this, also, I am hiring. So please holler. We don't accept insurance, which is a whole nother thing that we can talk about. But so it's a much more free, sort of decolonized way to think about work, the work that you do in your healing work, right? And keeping it private and all kinds of other amazing reasons why we do things the way that we do them. But part of what we do is called integration. So integration work, which is, if you've heard of things like setting, right? All of that, like, we know that everything down to like how long your eyes are closed to how long your eyes are open during, to what kind of music you're listening to. It all affects how psilocybin specifically is going to work moving forward. So I focus a lot on integration. So because this is sadly still considered an illegal substance in most of this country, decriminalized in some spaces, but
Schedule 1.
Yeah, still,
right?
Which is the criminal part, but that's a whole other thing. So we don't provide any of that, but we absolutely provide the services to help you actually create a healing experience and a therapeutic experience for yourself during, after, and in the future, which is what is known as integration work.
Amazing. The question I would ask, and it's sort of rhetorical, is how could we allow this type of medicine, this powerful of a drug, to be legal if it works with one dose when we're trying, we being the American medical establishment, are trying to sell Chantix.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, that's why they're not.
Sell SSRIs or trying to sell a drug. That's why it took so long
for cannabis to get to the point that it did too, because they need to figure out how to make the same amount of money. They're like, we need to still figure out how we can get as rich off of this.
Is that microdosing? Well, how do you feel about microdosing? And is that
I love microdosing. I love microdosing. Absolutely. I absolutely love microdosing. I think it changes people's lives. And a lot of the people that I work with agree. My husband has studied microdosing for quite some time. It's something that he had been doing even before, thinking about, learning about, reading about. And I think that people that have been doing this because this is not a new thing, right? But doing it not in the intention of like, I'm trying to party and have a good time and sort of create this escapism, but people who take this sort of like medicinally, not just to like have a good time, but are taking things medicinally to actually create some level of healing in their body. This is ancient work. So this is going to happen no matter what, right?
It might be the oldest work. It might be the reason we have a frontal cortex.
I think it is.
I mean, a lot of people think it was the moon goddess, right?
Yeah.
That was the moon.
Well, some people
grew
think
the
we actually
mushrooms,
are just fungi, ultimately, which is one of the reasons why it actually works so much better than a lot of the other ways that we also can get serotonin, right, in our bodies, but doesn't work as well or as quickly. Yeah, I know. This is
meaning like the consciousness part of what we are. Like we're definitely animals, but the consciousness part is a superimposed fungal.
Well, it could be the consciousness part, but also like even if you take it back even further, like before we were anything, like even that far back.
Oh, like our earliest known ancestors are not bacterial cells, or we're not plant cells. It's a fungus.
Yeah. But I don't really think about that so much because it's neither here nor there for me. I'm more interested in like, all right, I know that in psychology, which is one of the reasons why I study decolonial therapy and liberation psychology, is because most of this stuff was taken from indigenous cultures already, right? Which we know in medicine and any of this. Like this is stuff like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like all Blackfoot Nation, right? Like everything was taken from that. He didn't hide it. Or it was just like very, we just aren't taught these things, right? These are things that are like left out of our education. So when you start to do this kind of work and you realize like, this is who we are, this is ours. Like I know I work within a system, which makes it easier for me to do my work, right? It makes it easier for me to get paid. It makes it easier for me to access clients, to access people. It makes it more accessible for me to get in front of people, right? To tell the truth that needs to be told, right? So, I mean, I work within the systems because I have a foot out because I know the truth, and I have a foot in because this is the reality of my life. And I'm not going to just like pretend. I think there's a lot of violence in disconnecting and pretending that we aren't where we are. We still are here doing this, Yeah. So a lot of the work that I do with the Trippy Therapist is really about how to create these, when you think about psilocybin, a lot of it is like the whole thing is that you're trying to create these new neural pathways. You're trying to, one of the ways that I sort of think about it is that if our brain is just like covered in snow, right? We're born, brain's covered in snow. And then there's like a couple of things. There's like this, like, if you imagine like a rainfall that like kind of like, you know how it like dents the snow a little bit? That's like our ancestors. It's like they're like, hey, here's some like little hail, like just kind of holes. They're just like throughout your like nice little clean snow. It's just there. Might be there forever. We don't know. Then as we start to grow older and we have these thoughts and these thought patterns, right? These neural pathways, it's kind of like we drove through the snow. So our brains, they want to keep us safe. They don't really care if it's the easier or the harder way. Or if it's the right way or the wrong way. It just wants to keep us safe. So if the tire tracks are there, it's going to go through the tire tracks. That's way safer. We don't know this other route. There's like too much snow there. Go through this tire track. And that tire track could say like, I hate myself. I'm such a piece of garbage. I hate myself. And it'll keep going through that because it knows that, right? So to create a new neural pathway that says like, I am worthy of love and care, that's a very conscious practice. It's like very hard. So that's kind of what I think about, is the goal of psilocybin, is creating those new neural pathways that hopefully just like fill in, if you're lucky enough to have that experience like I did with the coping mechanism that I had. Like I was literally probably smoking a pack or more of cigarettes a day since I was 15.
Yeah.
And then I never did it again, didn't even think about it.
Yeah, it's that powerful.
It's amazing.
Think about it like shaking up a snow globe.
Yeah.
It's like a snow globe. Everything is set.
Yep.
Like it's all there in this completely, and it'll never change unless you pick that fucker up and really give it a shake. And you kind of got to like reset, like hit that reset button on the Xbox or something. Like, you're like, I don't know, what was a device that used to have a little, you know what I'm talking about? The reset button where you had to take a pen and really jab it in there.
Yeah.
I don't know what device I'd be thinking about.
Maybe like that, I swear.
Like a TI-83 calculator? Would that happen?
Probably that would have had one, yes.
I don't remember.
Calculators were silly.
It's crazy. I used to do that all the time, and I can't think of a single thing that I used to do it too.
Did you see that meme where they were like, remember when your teacher used to be like, you can't use your calculator because you're literally not going to be able to walk around with that for the rest of your life. And now we like all have phones.
That's good. No, I didn't see it, but the one I saw today that blew my mind was, this guy, Jimmy Edgar, who talked about how we don't see our cell phones or any other complex machines in dreams.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, I never.
And that's
so true.
It's because when we're dreaming, we're accessing something much older. It doesn't have to do with our day-to-day life. It has to do with symbolism and ancient archetypes, ancient structures. And so your brain actually doesn't have, the deep subconscious doesn't actually have a symbol for cell phone. It's too new. It's like a couple, 30, 40 years.
Interesting. I mean, I talk about dreams a lot in my work, obviously, but I never like put that together.
We spend 12 hours a day staring at this little brick.
Yep.
But then when you go to sleep at night, you never see a cell phone. And if you ever pick up like an electronic device in a dream, it's kind of like being on acid. Like you see it with just squiggles and
or like lights.
Yeah, it just gives you this like weird LED thing that's not
interesting.
It's not legible.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be psychedelic assisted psychotherapy rather than just psychedelia? Meaning, what is the, like, it gets back to this conversation we were having about how there's this industry and capitalism and how everything has to be marketed versus the shaman who has had a role in society for eons, maybe since the beginning of civilization, right?
Absolutely.
And so why can't we just give people the medicine rather than saying like, like all the new clinical trials are all on psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Well, think about it. When you say psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, where's the power in that lie? In psychedelics or psychotherapy?
In the psychotherapy, right?
Yeah. So that's a problem. And I even though I happen to be a psychologist. I'm not a psychologist, but I happen to study psychotherapy and psychology. I'm a psychotherapist. Oh my gosh, stop giving me wine. Okay. I am a psychotherapist who studies psychology.
Yes.
And I don't want people to think of me that way, if that makes sense. I want it to be this thing where it's like, this just happens to be like what I do, the confines of like how I exist in this, whatever this is.
Yeah.
but this is not like who I am or what I believe. I absolutely disagree with almost all of my colleagues. I think that the majority of therapists take the easy way out. I think that most of them are completely uneducated. I think that most of them don't have the juice of what it really means to be a full person in this world. I think a lot of the work that we do was meant to get people back to work, right? And so even though there are phenomenal people doing this work, right?
Wow.
Like there truly are. There's incredible people doing this work, but the majority of them fall short. And that was my experience. I think that's the reason why we only have, 4 or 5% of therapists are of color, which is horrific. And part of that is because most of us have been abused by systems, right? Abused by these systems. So we don't trust them. And so I think I literally do this for representation, just to be like, hey, if you think you need something and you can't trust any of those people, just know if you're Black, if you're brown, if you're an immigrant, if you're a refugee, if you're a gangster, I don't care who you are, you can call me and we won't do a damn thing on the books. That's what I want people to think of me as, right? I just have a platform to be able to advocate in a different way as a clinical psychotherapist that I wouldn't necessarily have as just a person who's I do psychedelics, right? Because we're not going to value that in the same way. And those people who are doing extremely important work, but they're not in the same rooms as I would be able to get into. And there's just a lot of, it's messy, right? It's like a messy mess. There are some really amazing things happening in Pennsylvania, though, that are very different than other parts of the country. So other places that are trying to get the use of psilocybin, for example, for for assisted therapy, they are often using synthetics and things like that. They're still working within the confines of a hospital or space like that. Whereas Pennsylvania had actually been working into when it's, because there's many people who are always working to get these things moving or passed, that we would actually be using the plant medicine and not synthetics. And then also, then also in Pennsylvania to be able to work outside of the space of a hospital so that you could be outside, you could be in a different environment. And then also figuring out ways to work with community members and what actually makes sense to create a safe space for people. So you could be a community member and do a training, for example, and then work with whoever you want. And the client, you might say, hey, I really want to work with Liana's husband. He's not a psychotherapist. I just want to work with him. And you do. And his therapist could help you out over here, but you don't have to be in this medical sort of experience. So I think that's a pretty cool, amazing thing that Pittsburgh and, Pennsylvania is doing differently that you don't see other states doing.
I love that. I always think about when I walk into the hospital and I see the patient, sometimes I'll see them in the emergency room in their street clothes. Mm-hmm. And then in the morning, I'll come back and round and I'll see them in the hospital gown and they look 100 times more sick. They've become a patient.
So true.
When they were wearing their human clothes, when they were wearing their human outfit, they just looked like a person, like another. And then we strip them of their identity and take them into this, put them in this room where we hook them up to these wires and cables. And now all of a sudden, we're in control. Yeah. It's our rules. It's our dictates. How could you ever do the type of work that you're talking about in that type of setting? Mm-hmm. I think there's only one reason to do it, and it's because you're trying to get money from insurance companies.
I completely agree.
There's no other explanation. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the number of people that are practicing therapists of color, 3-4%. What's the percentage of people seeking therapy that are of color?
So it's interesting because there's actually more and more and more every moment.
Good.
So but there are groups that are supporting this. So there are groups like Black Girl Therapy. There's a number of groups online that are creating these sort of safe spaces to go. So they're cataloging. So you've probably heard of Psychology Today, right? So every therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, you can have a profile in Psychology Today. That's where a lot of people find their therapist.
Oh, cool.
What's going to pop up when you're looking for somebody. But these other sites are creating spaces very specific for people who are either looking for somebody like them or just somebody that has like a decolonial theory attached to like the work that they're doing, or just people who understand them, right? Because it's like everyone has a very different experience. This concept to me that just because you're a therapist means that you can work with people's deepest, darkest psyche, right? But you don't know anything about the experience of being Indian. You don't know anything about the fact that Indians have experienced genocide. You don't know anything about you don't have these but you think that you should be doing that work. Like there's a Pittsburgh, like a local Pittsburgh group of therapists. It's a Facebook group that you like kind of like join into. And all of these therapists are on there. I kind of just watch because I usually get torn apart whenever I jump in. But it's kind of horrific, to be honest with you. It is so racist and so basic. So like the other day I saw this comment that was like, looking for an interracial relationship person. Okay, just so you're aware, I was talking earlier about how I am like a serial entrepreneur, but I run and own and operate with my business partner, Sydney Olberg, the Center on Interracial Relationships. I am the only person who has been doing this kind of work specifically for years. And because I created it because it didn't exist. No one was doing this work. It wasn't that no one could talk about it, but certainly not in this realm. There were social justice spaces that we could have those conversations, but it was very rare. So I created this because it wasn't a thing. A couple people throw in my name. The rest of it is, I'm white, but here's my information. Or I'm married to a black man. So I'm qualified, I guess. Or, right, like these kinds of like very basic, my husband is Jewish, or like just these like, so now I know everything. It's just kind of like these ridiculous, like.
I adopted a kid from Brazil.
Literally. Okay, look, the next thing I was going to say was somebody who said I have adopted children. Because that's literally it. And now you all of a sudden,
that's what it is,
like,
right?
Well, my husband's a doctor, so I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And I think that is so sick and so hurtful and harmful because it keeps the status quo in place. And that is what keeps everybody ill. And so I think it's a very scary, precarious thing for me to do the work that I do because most of the people that do this work don't want people like me to be doing that work. Just like you're saying, like, why do we want, like, it's like we don't actually really want this, right? There's many people who don't really want you to do the work the way that I'm doing it. When I went to school, they tried to kick me out. They were like, I don't think that this is for you. I don't think, and I was like, have you gone on Instagram? Like, clearly not, because there are definitely people like me when you look in the worldwide, stage of this work that are doing tons of decolonial therapeutic work. But they don't want that because they want to keep their own ignorance. Like, I went to school for this, good enough. That's not good enough. You should be in the damn bookstore every other week buying a stack of books and reading them. If you think that you have the right to just work with people's emotional states, historical trauma, they all throw around this word trauma, and know nothing. They know nothing. So I sort of have this thing that I do in my own mind when I meet people. I'm like, do they know this, and this? Because if they don't know these kinds of things, I don't even give them the time of day. I don't care if you're a professional.
Right.
Right? We know we didn't learn this stuff in school. Like, be honest. Tell the truth.
Community high. Howard Zinn. People's History of America. Howard Zinn was my U.S. history textbook. That's pretty good. It's a good start.
Very rare.
It's a good start.
That's rare.
It's a good start.
Where did that happen at school?
Community high school. Ann Arbor, Michigan.
That's amazing.
I wish I could remember the name of the...
Not happening in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my friend.
No. What was the teacher's name?
That's cool.
She was also my forum leader.
That's so cool.
Fuck, I can't remember her name. I'm sure she's dead.
Yeah.
What's her name? Anyway, yeah. The first chapter is like Christopher Columbus hops off the ship, starts riding the natives around and slicing off their arm. It's like, wait a minute, like this is not what we learned.
Yeah, no. And it's so different, right? Because you're talking about this experience you had there, and we're literally watching people ban educational books in other places.
Sure.
Like, it's unbelievable if you're just, and that's what I mean when I say I'm lucky. Like, I'm lucky I grew up in a home with books. I'm lucky I grew up with access to like some of the best libraries in the world, right?
Yeah,
like, I'm lucky that this is a thing because most people, they don't even crave that information. I'm telling the audience right now, I said this to a client the other day, not even kidding you. They were having a little breakup. They were like, I don't know about this person. And I was like, I'm going to be really corny because probably like every social justice person has said this. But I was like, what was on their bookshelf? And they were like, well, they didn't really have a bookshelf. They kind of just like stacked books on the floor. And I was like, okay, we can, that's reasonable. But okay, but like, what kind of books were they? And then they proceeded to tell me, and I was like, oh, okay. Because it matters. Yeah. Like, it matters. Like, your need to, I don't care if it's a book on the ground or a podcast or a book on tape, right? Audio tape, but like, Audible. I don't care what it is. But if you're not seeking this kind of level of information, not just for your clients, but even my friends, like if I'm having a conversation with you about who you are in your life and I love you and care for you, and I'm like, whoa, I don't actually know anything about that. I owe it to you and to humanity to get that information. That's just wild to me that we don't think that we should have this knowledge. Like,
I think you need
wild.
Like multiple sources too.
To multiple
me,
sources. Yes,
that's like become very clear from the pandemic and the response, and then like the what else? Like the wars, like whether it's Ukraine or Gaza, Palestine. It's like there's so much propaganda, like
so much.
And trying to filter through what's true is not. It's not something you can do in a day. Like,
no.
You have to really...
And it's a skill. It's a skill that you build, right? And we have to build that if we want to fight it. If we want to change the world, we have to understand what is happening. Because when you read, you go, oh, this is textbook. It's literally the same. You can trace what's happening, for example, in Gaza, Palestine to any other... like anything. Like literally every single playbook is the same. Propaganda is propaganda. It works the same way, no matter who we're applying it to. And I think that when I studied cultural studies, which is critical theory, like that's what it is. That's what you learn to do. Like, and that's the whole like liberal arts that everyone's like, don't do that. You're never going to make any money. You know what? Okay, well, I figured that out, but at least I know, right? Like, at least I know. Yeah. And, I can figure out the money part later. But at least, like, I had the experience of knowing, like, really knowing the truth, And I think that is so powerful. It leads me to this conversation about, well, we both have children now, which is, like, a thing that I'm curious to know from you how that's changed your life, because it has...
trip, man.
Intensely changed.
It makes you think about people as big babies, like as big grown-up babies. Like think about Hitler was like a little baby that somebody fed, like put a bottle in his mouth or a boob in his mouth and like loved and held. And every single person that you see is a grown-up baby. They're just like a little tiny helpless infant for a full year and a half, maybe even 2 years, because the head of the human mammal is too... has to be small enough to get out of the birth canal. Yeah. And so they come out helpless. They are completely useless. It's not like a deer, where it just kind of
right. They just jump up. Yeah, no.
We don't have that.
We don't have
function.
That.
We aren't like horses or cattle. Like we have this very unique situation with our head size and brain size where we just have to be completely
Just ask my little baby. He has the biggest head you've ever seen. He's just like... Hopefully you never listen to this podcast, my sweet loving baby. I love you so much. But you had a very big head when you were a child, and it was adorable because you would just try to walk and then you would just fall.
So I think that's the main one. Is like it really makes me, I think, a little more compassionate, and a little bit more like patient with people. And when I see somebody begging on the on the street, waving a sign or whatever, like it's like. They aren't there because they want to be. No,
nobody is there.
Not any kind of a choice. Like they had all of these layers of, like you said, trauma or whatever, like environment was put upon them that when they were little, they just didn't get what they needed. Like, and
they sure didn't.
And so it in one way, it's like very like inspiring. And when I see my kid, like at the end of the day, of course, it's just, it's everything. It's amazing. But in the other way, it's kind of like, well, what about all the other kids that I'm not helping? It's like there's a lot of people out there that could use my energy and attention and love and support and financial support. Probably, it's like there's like environmental arguments and like financial arguments against having children, you know, and it's like
tons.
But
I have something to say about that. Keep going.
For me, like it's, you know, there's also this huge personal drive to reproduce and pass on your genetic information and have a legacy and establish it. It's like,
you want to hear my theory about that?
Yeah. Please.
Are you Jewish?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I figured Isaac. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh yeah, Isaac Goldzer. It's like, plus the nose. You just like meet me and it's just, they know right away.
So I'm going to say this because as a Jewish, the reason I wanted to just say that is because, well, you know, it's important to not assume things about people, but also because what I'm about to say absolutely applies to me and to you. Yeah. But I learned this. It changed my life because, so I have a number of white, and I think this is important to say given the world in this current state, I think like when we talk about whiteness, it's really important, right? Because a lot of people could be white, right? It's kind of like a mindset more, you know, obviously it's like you're who you are,
it's
right?
Like the YT
like there are Jewish people who are white and there are Jewish people who are Jewish and just Jewish.
Wow.
I absolutely believe that.
That's beautiful.
But that's a whole other topic of conversation.
You have to be like select a level like into the hip-hop community.
It has to do with our level of humanity, I think. Well, no, look, for real though, absolutely, right? Because why? Like if you grow up with people who are different than you, you're like, I love your babies too. And it's going to change. And I think that's what, you know, anyway, this is
you grow up in you know, suburban Detroit on, you know, in Oak Park on a block where it's, you know, every single block is like a white kid, Chaldean, Hispanic, Mexican,
you're going to see
black,
the world differently.
Like Asian. It's, you know, it's different than growing up in Mars or
well, there's a difference between like you, like when I look at, there are people when I think of white people, right? Not white people who just happen to be white, but like whiteness, right? Yeah. I think, you know, when we think about supremacy, right? We think about this concept. So I deeply, there's a writer who I love named Cassie Lehman. He's my favorite writer. And he had this thing on that he had written that I read, and it changed my life. But he talked about he said it so beautifully. I'm just going to paraphrase it, but he said if you learned anything from Black people, if you all take everything from us, if you learn one thing, it's that we never, ever, ever harm our enemies' children. He's like, you want to take everything, but you don't want to take that.
Wow.
And I thought it was really powerful because there is something to be said, right? Like there are people who, we know, do not love all the children, and there are people who, you know, love all the children, right? And I think like that's, so the whole thing about having children and not having children, which is why I asked you about your identity, was because, and also I guess like we're online, like people don't all see who we are, you know, like we don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm adopted too. So like no one knows who I am based off my name, right? Like I could have a total Jewish name. I have a friend who's Chinese and she has a completely Jewish name because she was adopted. Like no one knows, like it's complicated. So I try to make it, like I try to be very clear about it because you never know. But there's an Indigenous woman who I'm lucky enough to learn from. But one of the things that she had said very publicly was that, so, you know, and just to be clear, I'm not speaking to people who are like very clearly just like, I just choose not to have children. I think anyone can choose not to have kids, like choose not to have kids. Totally fine. So this is not about you. But I do think there's a difference between that and people who give you this whole spiel about why you shouldn't. Right? Because of like the economy and the environment and all of that. Because you know what? I'm like, could you be more white? Because if you've experienced, right? If you have actually experienced what it means to have every single part of your identity extinguished, like Black people have, like Jewish people have, like, right? So many lists. There's so Indigenous to America, right? Like there's so many people. That is not even a thought. It's like, of course we are. Of course. What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's not even a question. Yeah. It's just such a different mindset. And I think that's so important to remember, right? Yeah. Like I have plenty of friends, don't have kids. Cool. Like don't have kids. But and they love my babies. They're not like, don't bring your kids over. I don't like kids, right? Yeah. But I also have a number of white people in my life who are no longer really in my life, who have those kinds of perspectives, and they cannot understand me. They don't understand. They never wanted to understand, right? They're all the white friends you couldn't keep, right? The ones who couldn't really understand or take the time out to see who you really are.
I think it shifts, like, because when you're young and you're idealistic, like maybe you have this idea that, you know, children, you know, destroy the world because they use too many diapers and
all true, but
like
all
they
other
grow
problems.
up to drive cars and like be consumers, and like, you know, maybe, you know, humans cause problems. You know, we definitely don't act in harmony or in homeostasis with our environment the way we did,
totally,
the way our ancestors did. But maybe when they're 40, 50, something will shift, you know, especially I think women probably have this kind of perspective. Once you hit that biological urge starts taking hold in your late 30s, 40s, and you start feeling.
It's like you actually need to figure it out now.
Decide,
make a choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of like my friends on Instagram, you know, posting about freezing their eggs and things.
People are doing that.
Shit's getting real.
It is getting real. Absolutely, it's getting real.
So, what do you think about suicide? We had the biggest year for suicide.
You were just like, bam.
Since
1941.
1941 was the last year we had this many suicides per capita in the U.S. 2022 was our biggest year. Although very, very small percentage of those suicides were in the Black community, since we've been talking about race so much. Asian was the smallest. It was like 20%. Like whatever. It was like a tiny little bar. And then the Black population, tiny little bar. The Hispanic bar is like almost the exact same as the Black bar. And then the white bar is like, and it's all old white men. And it was like the most of like the biggest growth is like 50 to 70-year-old white men. And then there was actually a decrease in the kids. The kids,
thank God,
during COVID in the 2021 had this big spike, and now it's back down. So it's actually decreased.
Before I answer that question, I'm curious. Before I influence you, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. Well, suicide is very, very, very touchy subject. I think.
Yeah.
It's really, you know, there are ways to go overboard in Canada. Like you have this right to death, basically, where it's like anyone can take themselves out for any reason at any time, and I think it's too much. I think like there's ways to kind of go too far, because if you're just like, I mean, like, you know, on the one hand, you're going to do it anyway, right? It's kind of like abortion, right? It's like, you're going to make it happen.
You're going to do it.
So like maybe it should be provided in a safe way by the state or whatever.
I agree.
I'm not sure. But like, it does seem to me like maybe if the state is actually providing the means, that there should be like a mortal illness like cancer or some kind of like serious,
not
painful.
Just like I just decided this because
Today
you never
sucked.
know, you might like change your mind.
Yeah. And I think that's what happened with Kevorkian, right? Like that was the big Detroit story. Was like Dr. K, when I was growing up, he was doing suicides out of his van, and it did seem like the way he was doing it, and I don't know the story like incredibly well, but it seemed like most of the people he helped die were like terminally ill. They were like very, very sick people that and his machine, he actually rigged it up. He was obviously very intelligent. He was a physician, whatever. Not that all of us are. Anyway,
that's what I was
he made them press the button themselves. So legally he was not on the hook so much, but ultimately I think he did get in trouble. But anyway, I have a lot of thoughts about it. I mean, I think it's, you know, it's.
Why do you think the white male piece of this is so? Why
it's growing?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a really interesting question. Like elderly white men, I think you have this this failure of utility. Like as you get older, you kind of like if you haven't integrated yourself into society in the right way, and you haven't like found your like your role as the leader of your family, or found your role as like a leader in your community, taking responsibility in some way, you're kind of just floundering.
Yeah.
You just don't have like any reason to keep going. And a lot of the time, I think it probably is health. I think there's a lot of like mental health is like a huge deal here. So depression, anxiety, I think those are probably the biggest killers. And
So that's where I think of depression and anxiety as actually symptoms and not diagnoses.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk to you about is what is depression? How do you feel? Like, how do you actually think about these things? Let's pivot back to suicide.
Yeah, I think, that, so I think of like sort of depression and anxiety are like these, these sort of like overarching, like, here we are, these are diagnoses. I don't think about, well, like I have a different perspective of diagnosing anyway, right? Like I don't pathologize people, even though it's my job to do that.
No personality disorders, mood disorders.
So I will do it. It's not like I won't do it, but I will only do it in the way that it makes sense for a client. Like, how is this going to help you? Like, I'm not just going to write it down so that it's like written down in your file for the rest of your life. I'm just kind of like, well, how is this going to help you? Is this going to help you get access to things you need at school? Is this going to help you get medication that you need? So it's a thing that we do together. I make people very aware of what it means that I put that in there. Yeah. Like what are the repercussions of that? And then we just kind of decide together what we're going to do. But I'm definitely not doing what they teach you in school to do, which is in what insurance tells you, which is the first time that I see you, that first moment, as soon as you're gone, for me to get paid, I have to give you a diagnosis. But I think when I think about suicide, this might sound more like my artistic self or creative self than my therapeutic self to some people. But like, again, it's the same thing to me. But like when I think about, I don't think about it in terms of like somebody's feeling anxious or depressed. Like I think about it in terms of like, what is living for? Right? If we don't have like an understanding of what we're doing here, and if we're not supported, right, in who we are, actually who we are, if we're not supported in that authenticity, of course people are going to start to ask, like, what is going on? So it can be divided into those two sort of categories of like people who are killing themselves due to whatever, mental illness or, whatever. And then people who are like, I'm really old and sick and I'm just like really over this and like no one will let me do this. That's a different thing, right? So let's separate out the suicidality of people who are like, I'm really ill. I'm actually ready to go and I just can't. Okay. Let's put that over there. I respect y'all. You do what you got to do. Hopefully someday I'll help you do what you got to do because I deeply believe in like people dying with dignity. There's
Amen.
that over there.
Amen.
Over here, we have people who are actually like, it goes back to what I said earlier about like what makes us sick is our society, right? When you really look into the reasons, like we could say like somewhat on a piece, like when we read these studies and we read these articles, it's like so-and-so died, these groups of people died because they had large levels of depression, right? I'm like, okay, well, why were you depressed? No one is ever going further and really addressing the depths of why, like, so adoptees have the highest suicide rate of anyone.
Beyond even veterans, military veterans. Wild. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some people don't want to understand that we are military veterans, which is a whole nother so I think there's this like piece where it's like, no, we actually like kind of are, right? We're babies, right? So we're children, but it's like just like any other child who's in a war zone right now, right? Like those kids are going to grow up and they're not going to be okay. So either they're going to grow up like any other kid who is having a hard time and disconnected from any sort of sense of self, and they are going to act out, or they're going to go inward, right, and become so depressed that they can't take it anymore. So I think that it's kind of like we all have different ways of expressing ourselves. We kind of go external or we go internal, and we all kind of express things differently. But I do think that the questions we're asking are wrong. It's not like, oh, mental health, why are you killing yourself? Because you have anxiety. Because how about you're killing yourself because you can't get the surgery, the like gender affirming surgery that you need, to love yourself and to care for yourself and to believe and like have a connection to who you are. How about that? So I think that like as we're doing this work and doing these studies, it's just as important, instead of like categorizing everybody in some sort of like DSM diagnosis. Like I'm not interested in terms of like why people are killing themselves based on a diagnosis. I want to know why. Why? Depression is not a why. That's just like you have the sniffles. Why? Do you have the flu? Do you have COVID? Do you have RSV? Like, why do you have this? It's just a basic cold. I want to know why you have the sniffles. I want to know why this is happening.
Here's the way that the argument potentially breaks down is there's actually no treatment for any of those different things. So if there's, I don't actually care why you have the sniffles unless there's a treatment. So I don't, again, like if there's a Tamiflu, then like maybe it's worth running a rapid flu, but like
otherwise, why?
Remdesivir is not really just like a routine treatment unless you're in the hospital. So anyway,
interesting.
That's the only reason like I care. I don't know exactly how it pertains to yours. I guess a little bit it pertains to mental health, mostly because like maybe the drugs for depression are different from the drugs for anxiety. But again, like I couldn't agree more. I think we have to get to root causes.
Well, I think that what you just said is really important because that is why we diagnose. So the DSM is not because therapists wrote the DSM. It's a psychiatry. It's all about psychiatry. It's literally, is there a medication? That's all it is. We diagnose people to find out medications. Okay. I don't give a shit about that. I believe in medication. Like, I'm not like anti-medication, to be fair. Like, I've used medications. I'm not anti-medication, but I'm also not like ignorant to the idea that like diagnosis exists so that we can medicate people, not so we can actually like improve their lives or figure out what's really going on. So I'm like, all right, if you're a psychiatrist and you want to do that, go ahead, do your thing, go whatever. But my job, if I see my job as more than just diagnosing people so they can get some medicine, and I see my job as actually healing, then it then becomes my job to say, what is the root source of this? What is, okay, you're an addict. Okay, we can go to 12 steps. Okay, cool. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. I want to know who you are. I want to know where you come from. I want to know what your parents are like. I want to know what your ancestors are like. I want to know if you have any idea who they even might be. I want to know if you know their names. I want to know everything, because that is how I do my work, is understanding that depth, right? And so when I think about people who, and suicidality and all of that, I think about people who are invisible. I think about people who are not seen. I think about people who have, and maybe the need is that they need to die and no one is listening to them. And maybe the need is that they, they need whatever, that's their need. Or maybe it is that they literally live in a society that hates them. Or maybe it's because they have toxic shame because of toxic masculinity, and like they just like can't provide for their family, and they realize like, wow, I just really like messed up my entire life and now I'm about to die and I'm old, my kids hate me. Like, I don't know, right? Like, there's so many reasons and there's so much depth in terms of like the choices and decisions we make. And I think that a lot of the work that I seek to do is to focus and hone in on that. Who are you? Who are you? Right? And that is an individual road, and in a DSM-5, there's nothing individual about it. It's just like, here, we have medication for you or not. Most people are over medicated. Like the people that I see, the first time I see them, you go over everything. What are you taking? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like horrified. Almost 95% of the time, I am horrified to see what people are taking.
Couldn't agree more.
And my own personal experience, same thing. I had postpartum depression. I had a psychiatrist trying to give me antipsychotics. No suicidality, no whatever, and I'm just like, no, on top of like,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't have any of those.
And then the next specialist you're going to see is me for the movement disorder that he causes.
Yep,
literally
absolutely.
Parkinsonism induced by the Abilify or whatever choice they were going to make. Yeah, I mean, it's
so I think it's like
insane.
So important that people like you and I do this kind of work, because we recognize that you have to do the most. So there are people who are like, I don't want anything to do with any of those systems who do this work, and more power to you. You're doing important work, right? Like, cool. And I think there's something so powerful about what we're doing, where we have a foot in and a foot out, because we are in a place where people are just coming and they just have this like trust. And we're like, hey, this is more complicated, or looking at it in a more in-depth way. And that's such a gift.
How has the cash business side of things enabled you to do
the majority
your work
of six
more freely?
Oh my gosh. This is the question that almost everyone has, because everyone shits on cash pay therapy for lots of reasons, right? Because we devalue therapy because it's women's work. Healing work is considered women's work often, or it's considered the work of the people, right? Where it's like, we just are supposed to like do this. And, you know, even though I'm like $250,000 in debt from school, but like, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I guess I don't have to pay
I'll see you
that.
and raise you one.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you will, right? And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like, but I'm not supposed to make any money. Okay. And then I guess because I'm like a social justice person, I'm not supposed to make any money too, which is like ridiculous. I'm a Black woman. I have so much to offer. I'm an adoptee, and like I absolutely deserve to like live my life. But I think that how it helps me, there's a number of ways that it helps me. There's a myth that most people use insurance. That's a myth. In the therapeutic world, they think that a lot of it is underreported. So it's like 65 is probably closer to 75% of people actually use self-pay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's actually very high.
That's dope.
So most of us don't know.
I'm sure
that.
they don't want us to know about it, because they want us to be absolutely just, I don't want to say suckling. They want us to be married to our insurance policy.
Absolutely, they do.
And this goes back to my interview with Bus Crates, because he said the only
That's
reason we're working,
homie. Wilkinsburg homie.
The only reason we're working is because we need insurance, because otherwise we'll die.
Yes. Yes.
Our families will die if we stop going to work.
Yes. Of course he's right, because he's the best. He's been my friend for a very long time, and I'm just so lucky to have people like that around me.
It's crazy.
But he's absolutely right.
Crazy. Universal healthcare 16 days ago. Let's go.
It's unbelievable, because I think like, so when I think about like, people often talk, so I guess I'm going to set this up. In the therapeutic world, the majority of therapists, so therapy is actually founded by our Jewish brothers and sisters, you know? Historically, that's like the root. The root is like, what just fucking happened? I want to understand this. And then it kind of morphed, right? Over time, you have more and more people, you have more, so it was initially very male, and then it changed over time to become very female, the genders of it changed. But right now it's like primarily white women who practice therapy. And we can have a whole separate conversation about that. But the reason why it's very dangerous is because of that, there is a lot of saviorism. There is a lot of this idea that like, I have the right to do the work that I'm doing just because of my identity, because obviously I know everything, right? And there's so many things that are just wrong. The reason why, a few reasons why, so I've had terrible experiences in therapy, which I've alluded through this conversation, but terrible experiences, misdiagnosis, just full-blown shamed, just completely like people who literally had no understanding of who I was at all, who thought they had the right, didn't refer me out. Like typically, if I go to you and I'm like, I need a urologist, you're like, I'm not a urologist. Here's a urologist, right? In therapy, it's not like that. They'll like say they want to refer, but like I said, they pretend to refer because everybody thinks they're the expert. So how, like, at least you guys are like, I do this, 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 and this. We don't have that. People can just say that. They can just say in the therapeutic space, even though we're healthcare, they can still say, oh yeah, I treat trauma. Well, what makes you unique to treat trauma? Just because you're a therapist? Ask people specifically, when you see a therapist, what makes you qualified to do this work specifically that's not school?
Do we need like accreditation boards like what we have for yoga? Like, do we need subspecializations? Do we need you to start a school for...
Well, I am. So like a lot of the work that I'm doing right now with the Trippy Therapist is really, so I'm getting the letters after my name that I need to do supervision for students that are incoming.
Dope.
So that's kind of like so I'm creating an archetype. That's kind of like what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that. But I think what we really need is honesty. We need all of these white women, particularly white men too, but particularly white women, because that's who's like the majority of these people, to sit with what are you really doing? What gives you the right to think that you can just like work with anyone? Every single therapist, we only have so much space in our heads, right? Figure out what it is that you have to offer and stick to it. Just bring them to me, bring them to me, bring them to me. I'm like, if you are not booked already because you have a need, then I'm like, I don't know about you. What are you doing? What are you doing? I am so suspicious of people who just have so much space. Unless you like just started your thing. I'm like, why do you have so much space? Because you're literally, you go on any of these websites and they're like, there's like, bullet point after bullet point. I treat PTSD. I treat anxiety. I treat depression. I mean, it's like there'll be like 60 things. And
they were told to do that for, what is it? SEO, search engine optimization. So it's the same thing in medicine that we have where you list all the different diagnoses that you treat in movement disorders on your homepage, along with your, the individual practitioners that you have in your group. And so you have dystonia, myoclonus, myoclonic epilepsy, Parkinson's, Parkinsonism, mood disorder, like everything. You list it all so that if anybody's using the internet and they type in, Pittsburgh, dystonia, then they see you.
It's so wild.
It has
because
nothing
it's
to
like,
do with what you're actually
if you're
like.
running a group, it's like, okay, I get it. All right. People are like, all right, you can come in and they can say, oh, I have these people, they work on this thing, and you have like all this. But a lot, like most of this is just like individual people, and they're all like, this is what I do. And I'm like, there's no way you even have like enough space in your brain to like be able to heal like all of those things. So I think a lot of it is like being honest. Like for me, I feel okay listing those things because I know that the work I do is focused on identity.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I will connect everything to what it is that I do. And I explain that before we even start and give you the option to go do whatever it is that you need to do. But I think it is, it's a mess. It's a big mess, right? But it's like, this is the system that we work within. And so even though I work within this system, I try to focus in and keep myself in the spaces of social justice movements, because that's actually like who I actually care about. I don't care what some therapist thinks about what I'm doing. I don't care what a board thinks about what I'm doing. Take my license. I don't care. I don't care. If you're really going to drag me through the mud like that, probably for something ridiculous, whatever. And if I actually created some kind of harm, then I'll own it. Right. But like, I think that like, I don't care. Like I know, because I've already figured out a way to do this work in every kind of way you could possibly do this work up until this point. I will just find another way to do what I do. It will never end. Like we will always be doing the work of liberation, no matter what or who we are in the spaces that we're in. It's going to happen no matter what.
So how does the cash pay help?
So the cash pay helps because so the cash pay helps because besides the like privacy, right? So there's two parts of it. There's the part for me. It helps liberate me. I don't have to give you a diagnosis immediately. I can take my time. Nothing is going on your record. No one is seeing, like when you try to get, insurance, nobody's like, oh, they have this and this and this diagnosis. If you're trying to do anything, I'm like not a gun person, but obviously like that matters, right? When it comes to like buying firearms, when it comes to getting cannabis, when it comes to doing anything that is regulated by our government, it matters what your records say. So I think these are other things that we need to consider. A lot of people were like, yeah, cannabis, yay, but didn't recognize that a lot of Black people were like, hell yeah. And then they were restricting their ability to get firearms. So now you have people who are like actually probably healthier because they're like doing work, they're seeing a therapist, they're doing that, who actually should be the ones who are like, if anybody's going to have it, you're probably the safest person to have it, who now can't access it. Totally. So there's a lot of layers that people don't understand. So a lot of that is like about education. So there's the side that benefits me. I don't have to take the same ridiculous notes in these ridiculous fake voice, like the client was, patient was, I don't even use the word patient. Patient was euthymic and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't have to do any of that. We're working together. You don't have to have an immediate diagnosis. Also, it's extremely private. So a lot of people don't realize, like, if you have a child and you're like, I don't know what's going on before I send them professional, can I just maybe see what you think? Go to a private pay person. It doesn't have to go on the record right away. Some people don't realize, like, you don't have to stick with me forever, even if you don't have the money forever. But like, let's talk first before you get your kid in the system. Let's create a space. People are talking about access. Let's create a space where felons can go, where they feel safe, because they're not going to trust anybody in the system. You could trust me. I'm not taking insurance.
Not taking insurance. Not taking notes.
Nope.
Game changer for privacy. Forget about HIPAA. You're way beyond that, because you're not even putting it into a computer system.
I don't have to.
You're not. No. It's not just that you're not sending it to the insurance company where literally anyone can look at it.
Yes.
And will. It doesn't
have to exist. And it can literally just, even if it exists, it can literally just say like,
it could be paper.
Isaac was feeling pretty good today.
Right.
And blah, blah, like, it can be like so basic. Like, and you know, that's it. not suicidal.
Wow.
End of story. Like it doesn't, it's like, because insurance, people don't understand how invasive insurance is. They are looking. Not only can they mess my stuff up at any time and say like, well, I don't like the way you did that. Actually, I'm not going to pay for those sessions. And then come back and say, give us $10,000 at the end of the year after an audit, because they do that all the time. Yeah. So there's that piece of it. So it's actually a very unjust system, both for private practice, which are usually small business, women-owned businesses, right? So both it's unjust in that way, but it's also like harmful for a client. And you don't know where that information is going to go. So I think it's important that we explore cash pay, particularly when it's something that we're concerned of, like, concern for like safety, privacy. Just come first. And then if I think like, all right, this feels, we'll talk about it. I'll tell you what this would look like under a systemic system. Yeah. And then you can decide if that's best, right? If that's what we need to do to get your kid the services they need, then that's what we need to do. But like, I think that there's a lot there, right? And I think we are always worried about access. And we forget, we have this assumption that like everybody that's like every marginalized person is poor, or every marginalized person values other things over their mental health. Like, it's just not true. There are lots of people who will pay me willingly to do this work because they care about their healing. Yeah. And most marginalized people care about their healing because they're spiritual people. They care about their healing. It's a myth, right? So a lot of this is about myths that and propaganda, right? That these systems sort of like put into play. And we play into and feed into, where we are like, whoa, certain people, they just don't have any money and they'll never be able to do that. And you're actually not helping anyone. You're only helping the elite. Like, I don't work with any rich white people. Like, that's not, I don't.
Yeah,
like,
nobody owns your business.
Why do you think that that's all I work
pulling
with?
The strings, like.
But if you call like any other therapist right now who works and takes insurance, that's what they will say to you. Like, I don't want to work. They'll say, like, when I tell people what I do, they say, like, I'm not trying to work with rich white people, because they think that rich white people are the only people with money and who value their mental health. There's always going to be community mental health. There's always going to be students. There's always going to be people filling that need, because this is the system. I work externally to service people who are also not interested in those systems, right? I'm working with people who are like, I want to change. Yeah. And or I want to solve a problem, and I don't want my problem to now be documented in a system for the rest of my life because I called you and now your insurance makes me do that. So I think there's so much freedom, and there's so many people who can be served without taking insurance, and also the load that it takes off of me personally in terms of my workload, which means that I actually get to retain more money, because instead of spending like, XYZ time taking notes, I'm spending like a quarter of that time, among other things. And then also I can talk about what I want to talk about. There's a lot of things, if you take insurance, that people could say that you're not supposed to say or do. I am much more free in how I talk to people, what I offer them, what I tell them to read, what I tell them to do. And if I'm going to say that I focus on liberation work, then that needs to look a certain way. There are plenty of places that I can send and move because I actually do phenomenal work when you get paid what you deserve in this work, you are able to serve more people. So instead of me working full time and being burnt out and miserable, I can work half as much time, get paid, feel good, and then go donate my time out elsewhere. So I do a lot of work with prisons. I do a lot of, I actually don't believe in pro bono work. It's actually like built into our system that people always pay something, even if it's like $5, just because it is like this investment in ourself. But I can literally spend the rest of my week I can do research. I can go to protests. I can educate myself. I can go take classes. Like, I can do all of the work that I need to do I've done more now charging cash full pay than I've ever been able to do in my life for the
Amazing.
People.
Yeah.
And I've noticed, I've learned that it's a myth. I've learned so hard that it's just a myth, that there's only certain ways that we can be helpful in this world.
Would you ever take barters? Like, I remember when I was DJing. We're
not legally allowed to do that.
Like, one time I played the Shot leather jacket company opening party in New Jersey, Long Island City, I think. They gave me this Shot Perfecto. I still have it downstairs.
So legally, therapists are not allowed. Our ethics code does not allow us to. Huh. But a lot of therapists do anyway.
Yeah, barter would be cool. And what about the other pieces, the apps? You kind of mentioned
Oh,
it in
yeah. So like
passing a
those
little
big
bit, but
companies.
Headspace, like, does
Yeah.
everybody need therapy?
Those are all hedge funds.
Should everybody be in therapy? Does everybody have this type
I
of
think
work
everybody
that they need
should
to do?
be in therapy, but I don't think that there's enough therapists to actually service that correctly. Hedge funds are literally who buys up these. So like when you build a large enough group, like hedge funds and different like literal businesses, like entities, they come along, venture capitalists, and buy your stuff and create things like BetterHelp, et cetera. Do not do that. Please. I know a lot of the like messaging is like, just get whatever you can. Just get like, no, absolutely not. There are many people locally who provide services at low costs and take insurance that are going to be much safer options than some of these like very large, huge companies. I absolutely do not believe that. Now, I know good therapists who do work through these organizations, but so it's not like you might get lucky and get like, but I don't trust it. And I actually hope that eventually we're able to dismantle it and go back to a different system. It's extremely dangerous for lots of reasons. And like I said, it's like big box businesses. It's like the Amazon of, therapy.
What about
and none of those therapists are getting paid well, which is another part to think about. A lot of people do that because I'm a very entrepreneurial person and unafraid. I don't care. Like if I lose everything tomorrow, I'm like, whatever, I'll figure it out. Most people are not like that. They're afraid to make money. They're afraid to go out on their own. They're afraid to be entrepreneurial. So they need money. We're regular people just like anyone else. We have to like eat. We have to feed our kids. And so we go, well, I have to have a job. And so they take these jobs, right, with these big box like companies because they feel like they have no other choice if they want to make money.
What about one of the things I talk about a lot on the podcast, which is this idea that sharing physical space actually matters.
Yes,
and a lot of people talk to me about why I don't bring in guests from out of town over Zoom or something like that.
Interesting,
It's like there's plenty of podcasts that I enjoy that do that. They have, and the sound actually seems to be coming along. The technology seems to be advancing. But that's not what this project is about. It's about being in a room with one person.
It's different.
And trying to find some common ground and learn something from them. And hopefully...
I'm one of the few therapists who see people in person still.
Wow.
It's not... In fact, I have a number of very brilliant therapist friends who do not see people in person at all.
Wow.
And so it's not that I don't believe that you can get good help that way, but like, it's hard. It's like really, really hard. And I don't enjoy it personally. And I do think regardless, it hinders it hinders how quickly you can move forward. I can't do my job as well. Like when you're on a screen, I can't see all of your body language. I can't have you like the things that I would do with you in a space where it's like we're actually in person. I can't do with you in the same way online, but also like it's the way that I practice, right? So I do a lot of physical somatic work with people, a lot of movement, and you can't do those kinds of things in the same way. I do things that we're probably not supposed to do. Like you're not supposed to really touch your clients, which I think is
it's psychotic.
Insane.
That is the definition of insanity.
I've done
like
work with
yoga
people,
teachers who don't touch
it's like I understand like the respect, right? So it's like I understand like if I'm working with like a sexual like abuse survivor, I'm not just gonna be like bam, let me put my hands all over you. But like in you've been in many yoga classes where people just ask like, is it okay if I give you this? Yes, okay, cool. Totally. And I think like that's fine. But I also think that like in a therapeutic respect, there's like I had a client once who I'm like I don't think this person has like actually been touched, hugged, nothing. And I did an exercise where they were, and if somebody reports me for this, then so be it. But I did an exercise where we sat back to back.
Yep.
And we did this like breathing matching exercise. And we actually paired it with music. And afterwards, like we, and they just broke down in tears. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't think anybody has touched me on any level. Just feeling like probably the tiniest bit of my back breathing. And I'm not supposed to do that. I mean, that's what I mean. Like,
been some really cool ones I've been a part of at music festivals. The one was there was one like really amazing one was like a full out of body experience, which I'll talk about. But the other one that was more similar to this one was where they just paired us up. It was, I think both were at Okeechobee, which I was just like,
wow,
amazing music festival in Florida. When I was there, I would go up and drive up with my buddies. And this time, like, and I'm the guy who wakes up at 8, 9, 10 o'clock and goes to yoga because it's just like what I do. And that was one of the main reasons that I went to the festivals, because that was something that they had every day, that there was like a different, and I actually knew some of the teachers and I knew it was going to be good.
Wow.
And so I went the first morning that I woke up, and you get out of the tent and you have this like terrible feeling of having slept on the ground, whatever, but you go and do it. And I sat and they paired us up, and it's just like some man that I've never seen before and I will never see again. And they just had us look into each other's eyes.
Oh, that's a tantric exercise. I do that too.
Do it for about like
for as long 30, as it
45
takes.
seconds. Both of us are crying and hugging each other and trying to just like, it was crazy, man.
That's what
I do. I never felt anything like that. That was
changed
crazy.
My relationship with my husband when we had problems many, many years ago, early on in our relationship. And it was like, definitely a turning point. It was one of those moments where you could definitely go either way.
Wow.
We're out or we're in.
Wow.
And locally there's a woman named Kelsey, and her best friend, Diane Gugumu, she is a tantric specialist. She travels the world, all over the world, like Brazil, Africa, everywhere. She does all this incredible work, but she's from here. She was actually my husband's, like, her dad was my husband's social studies teacher or something. Cool. And like all advice. But she came to town and did this with us.
Wow.
It changed our entire relationship. I really see it as a turning point in our life where I was like, all right, this is where we are going to win. Like, we're going to do this. But the same thing happened. Like, we looked at each other and it was like, we just were like puddles. We were just like, we saw each other as like humans and not just as these like images that we had sort of created in our minds with our like own expectations. It was life-changing.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff that I like to do with people.
Yeah. We really are. Like, we're so much more than these bodies.
So much more.
It's very clear. I think when you talk to people who've had these type of experiences, these old souls, when I talk to my mom, anyone, like you get a picture of like, this is just it's a shell.
It is a shell.
It's like, just something bouncing off of our visual cortex and something that like carries our voice. Even our voice isn't us, right? This is just how my vocal cords reflect these ideas, which are not coming from me.
No.
There's something
all
outside.
All the thoughts in your head are not your own. Like, everything is coming to us, and we are deciding what to keep and not to keep. Like, when we are so righteous and so like, I know. And I'm like, you didn't read anything. Like, how do you know? But I know. It's like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, we only know what we know. And it's like we have to figure out a way to let go of our fear and be brave so that we can create a loving and safe community for everyone. And it's possible.
I think so too. I'm very optimistic. I said it on, I think with Kev, I was like, I'm very bullish on humanity. I want, but I think that there are a lot of obstacles, and one of them is two-party political systems.
Gotta go.
Gotta go. If you think that like Biden and Trump is any kind of a choice, there's a lot of education that needs to happen.
Lots, to say the least.
He invented the crime bill. You were talking earlier about about the changes in the 80s in Wilkinsburg, and I mean that was the author of the crime bill that established crack cocaine versus powder cocaine.
Yes, and I left this part out of the story, but you're going to appreciate
Joe
this.
Biden.
Because we didn't really talk about being a parent too much, but being a mom has completely made me lose my mind. And so during this conversation, you will see how I just jumped around from thing to thing and it was kind of spaced out. But that question was, so my best friend growing up, my best friend in grade school, like first grade, right? I found out years later, while I'm like literally growing up in my neighborhood, watching these people leave, watching these people go to prison, her father was one of Clinton's lawyers and like literally wrote the RICO Act. Literally wrote it.
Wild. Yeah.
Gave himself a heart attack, eventually left that and went into philanthropy.
So RICO, for those that don't know, my understanding is this is like the racketeering law where you're basically it's a conspiracy.
It's a conspiracy. It's like,
it's a way
you talked to Liana, so we're getting you too. And then everyone, your whole family, everybody can go away for infinite periods of time.
And they used it against the mafia. That was like for people that are into like Sopranos or
they think they used it to say they were going against people with the
that
mafia,
was the initial idea.
Yeah, but they actually were using it to go to create the war,
to destroy the black community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for using very clear terms. Destroy the black community. That's exactly what it was.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it was. And that's exactly what they were doing. And I think like they made everyone think like this is for these other things. And it's like they used it for that here and there. But it was really about obliterating. I mean, if you've ever read the Moynihan Report or anything like that, like, the goal was to obliterate these communities because, again, we're talking about like much larger systemic
You had these like
issues,
power surges, these moments of change and transition where you felt this thing rising up, that things might change in the 60s. You had it with the Black Panthers. And then you had like COINTELPRO, 69, and then 70, you had, all the assassinations, which were obviously like CIA, FBI, like, no question, right? The state just takes people out if they get too powerful and tell too much of the truth. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Huey Newton, sorry.
Yep,
Not Huey Lewis in the news. I've said that a couple times wrong, whatever. Cool. But the movie is amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then in this 1970, they actually wrote the legislation that made marijuana, cannabis, psilocybin, LSD, all Schedule 1.
Yes.
So it's like, to me, it's very clear that these were connected.
100%.
That the drugs were allowing people to see past the propaganda, that you had people thinking for themselves. Too many people were trying to get away from the doctrine, the dictates, and the like capitalist ideology that was being, go to school, go to work, make money for the man, die sick and whatever. And too many people were waking up. And so they had to pull the plug.
Absolutely. And it happens over and over and over again. We're seeing it now. I mean, we're literally seeing it like right now. Like it is constant. Like it doesn't matter what is happening in the world. Like it will always be a thing that they will try to take out the people who are helping you see. I think this is why what's happening right now in the world, particularly with the Israel-Palestine situation, or not situation, I mean, it's a genocide, but I think like what's happening in terms of what we see on Instagram, like this is the first Instagrammable, like we haven't seen any, like there have been plenty of these things, like we know, can you imagine if you think about like all of the historic, I mean, there's many genocides happening currently, right, in this moment.
Yeah.
But if you think about historically how it would have changed if we saw this on our phone.
Yeah. Vietnam. Like how
Vietnam
much shorter would Vietnam have been?
What would it have been if we saw it like right there?
Yeah, South Vietnamese like actually had the,
it's just, I feel like it's unbelievable, right? To think about how this is like at everyone's fingertips, which is why they're working so hard in terms of the propaganda, in terms of the like keeping people like ignorant,
showing the tunnels and the AK-47s lined up on the table.
Well,
whatever.
Even just like saying this says this, and it's like it doesn't say that. Like it doesn't even say that. Like what are you talking
like
about?
the computer had like what? Anyway, we can go down the road.
It's textbook, right? And I think that's the important thing to know is that these are not isolated incidents. Like this is something that is happening in a very large way in front of us, but this is something that has happened many times to many people at, historically. Yeah. And this is just different because it is, and I dare I say in the best way, because so when we see these people and these parents like holding these children and they're like filming this,
awful.
It's basically Emmett Till. It's literally like Emmett Till happened, and that mom was like, I am showing the world because you need to see what you did to my baby. And she just said that over and over again. Right. Look what they did to my baby. Look what they did to my baby. That's the point. And it's rooted in that like need to create, like to believe that every person is human. Like every child is a human. You don't get to pick and choose. Like this child is a terrorist. This child is bad. This child deserves to die. They're all babies.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can identify the problem when you just look at how the statistics are given to us.
Well, yeah.
They just say 15,000 Palestinians. They don't say enemy combatants, Hamas, civilians, It's just 15,000. There's no number.
No human.
Here's one that's crazy for me.
Aspect to it.
Because I obviously, like I've said, I mean, I have, religious Jewish dad. I've been to Israel multiple times. I just posted a video of myself at 13 going and doing my bar mitzvah portion on top of Masada with the Israeli Defense Forces flying overhead as I'm reading out of the Torah.
Wow. Wow.
That's
so intense of an image.
I had 3. Oh, it's on my YouTube now. I had 3 bar mitzvahs. One at my dad's Orthodox, shul, one at the conservative, whatever, synagogue that I went to where I did my Hebrew school, and then in Israel. So obviously I see all kinds of things, but I'm trying to think of what exactly I wanted to say about this. There's so much to get into. I think if I were to try to pick it apart about what's actually happening, and if I were to be a little bit on the cynical side or a little bit like try to read between the lines, I feel like the two-state solution is over. That this is Israel saying
they never
taking everything.
Yeah, I don't think they ever wanted it.
From the river to the sea is about to become a reality, but it's going to be all Jews. No, sorry, not all Jews. It's going to be all Israel.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, half of those people are, like, barely even, like, culturally Jewish. They, like, just took it from Europe and were like, oh, we're going to take this. We had free everything. Like, let's go.
So here's the problem. If it all becomes Israel, is that there's already a large Arab population in Israel, and there's this major Arab population in East Jerusalem. There's a major Arab population in Gaza and in the West Bank. And if you allow everyone to instantly become citizens, which obviously should have happened 50 years ago.
Should have been the only option.
Then now you don't have the majority anymore. The Jewish majority is gone. And so what's the solution? You expel them, you kill them, murder them, and you send them into Egypt and don't allow them to return.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's what's happening.
I think that is what is happening. I think it's even worse, though. I think it's something that has been the reason I feel like that is because I am a Black person and because I am like a social justice person. And I'm like, this is by design. It's just by design.
Yeah.
It's just part of because this is so this is like the American thing to do. I mean, you heard that Biden when he said, if we didn't have an Israel, we'd have to invent it today. Like he said that years ago. This wasn't a new thing he said. This was something he said, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago or something. Yeah. Because they just and it's all using, just like they used Christianity, we use these religious systems, right, to convince people of all kinds of things. I think what is the most important part of all of this to pull out, because I probably have to pick up my children soon.
Oh shit! Yeah.
The most important thing, we'll have to do a part 2. We'll just be like, audience, do you want a part 2 of this super deep conversation? I know this is very different than what you're used to, but maybe we need to just do a part 2 before you go out of town. It'll give us an excuse to hang out again.
Man, I'd love that.
But I think what it comes down to ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about what happened in Philadelphia, with Black people in Philadelphia,
the home bombing,
the Panthers, and all of that. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about Gaza. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the Holocaust. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. At the end of the day, we're talking about supremacy. We're talking about people who oppress and oppressors. None of us are ever immune to becoming on one side or the other. At any moment,
the Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah. Anyone can just be like, actually, you know what? I hate you. And I think that the point of all of this at the end of the day is to recognize that the cognitive dissonance that makes so many people ill, I think about what's happening right now, particularly myself, is the cognitive dissonance. Because I know people who have Black Lives Matter signs in their yard who are burn them to dust. And I'm like,
yeah, bulldoze.
Do you hear Gaza, yourself?
Yeah. Yep.
How do you not see that dissonance? And this is what fascinates me about the work that I do, is because I want to understand that. And also I want to figure out how I could never.
Yeah.
I could never.
Yeah, the book.
I could never.
How You Can Never Be Like That. The book is Hitler's Willing Executioners. Phenomenal book about.
I've read that. Yep.
So look at you.
I have. I've read it.
So
what we could do is we could share our little libraries together, and we can attach them to this episode.
A lot of them.
And then we will do another episode.
That'd be crazy. Yeah,
that would be so great.
A lot of them are at my mom's house because I was just like what I grew up on was just reading. We didn't have a TV. And it's just like she still just lives among books. It's just a whole house of books,
so
mostly
cool.
like Holocaust studies and a lot of like just German studies in general because she's interested in Bauhaus and design.
Yeah.
And then
wow.
Like a lot of history. So
it's imperative.
It's imperative. Okay, a couple things. Marian Evashevsky is the name that I couldn't remember of my form leader at Community High.
Yes.
Shout out Marian Evashevsky.
Yes.
We used to call it Eva Sketchy.
Yes.
The other situation at the music festival was the drum circle where I had the out of body experience. I was just tired. I wasn't on anything. I just woke up. I just had not slept in like 2 days because I was at different points and I couldn't find my way back to the camp. So I just slept in an igloo. And when I woke up, I was like, oh, I looked at my watch and it was time for yoga. So I went to yoga, but it was just like it wasn't yoga. It was just a drum, like a sound bath.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we all laid down on our backs and then a guy came around with smells and then another guy, there were about 4 or 5 of them. One person had a drum and he was beating it. Another person was walking by me and saying, you are enough, you are enough, you are worthy, you belong. And just like people were beating drums and burning incense and smoke. And eventually I was just transported, just 300 feet above. And I could see my body down there on the grass, like laying there completely, totally sober. And it was just pretty phenomenal.
That's so cool.
That was also Okeechobee. But the final, I don't know if we have to do final. Oh no. But
that's my husband definitely calling right now. Like, where are you? I have to pick up our children.
Integration to change the culture of medicine was the topic of the talk that I gave at Georgetown with a clinical psychologist named Ben Bensadon. And a lot of it was about the stigma against psychiatry, stigma against psychology. But for him, it was about his whole thing was, I belong on the faculty of the medical school. Psychology is necessary. We need to be teaching this to our medical students. This needs to be a part of American medicine. So how can we integrate therapy? How can we integrate, talk therapy?
I think less than integration,
into
the conversation is more about normalizing. But I think in order to normalize it, we have to also have higher expectations of each other. So I think like step one, let's have higher expectations of our therapists. That's step one, because we need to get rid of some of these people who have no business doing this work, who are causing a lot of harm, because that is what is preventing people from doing the work. So I think like step one, like it's unbelievable to me how many therapists are not speaking out about what's happening right now, for example, when it's like, who are like, I specialize in trauma. I work with refugees. 1 in 3 people are Palestinian refugees. 1 in 3 refugees in the world. 1 in 3 are Palestinian. 1 in 3.
Yeah.
I specialize in the crickets. What do you mean you specialize? How do you specialize in that? But you don't even understand. Like, I think there is I think that like step one is like have these higher expectations of the people we work with. Ask them questions. Who are you? What's your deal? Why do you think you should be able to work with me? Right? Like whatever it is, right? So I think like a lot of it is that, advocating and being clear about our expectations and then moving forward in that. I'm not super mad if we don't move in a way that, like if we keep this underground forever, I'm okay with that too. Like I know that no matter what, we're going to do what we're going to do because people have always done this work. It's never not happened. It is community work and it will continue to be community work. My concern is that it gets in the hands of the wrong people and that can do a lot of damage. And so I think thinking about it like that is more helpful in terms of like, okay, if it's going to be a thing, how can I make sure that it's only in the hands of the right people? And that can look like training. That can look like these are the things that should be involved in that. Like it can look like lots of things from the inside in terms of our advocacy in the work that we do and the expectations we have of each other. But that's kind of where I'm at. And I think a lot of that is about like empowering everyday people to say like, just to any of their professionals, like what gives you the right to work with me?
Amen. What gives you the right? Tell people how they can find you if they want help.
And the Trippy Therapist. That's it. Trippy Therapist online, the trippytherapist.com. The trippy therapist. That's me.
I love it.
Liana.
Liana, this was
I love
so
you
good.
so much. This was so
You too.
wonderful.
Thank you so much
So
for sharing
wonderful.
your perspective.
You have to let me do this again.
This was awesome. Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, I just feel like we have so much left.
We have so much
this
left.
This is awesome. Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Let's get a picture.